Lord of Mysteries. Survival from the Secret Doll Chapter 1-20. Chapter 1 Tang Eggs Ramsden. The morning sun passed through the newly replaced glass yesterday, leaving a fresh and beautiful taste on the ground. This is a quiet morning, and the servants in the castle get up early to start their daily work. Baron Ramsden went out on patrol yesterday and has not returned yet. The two distinguished lords who had just returned from overseas a few days ago and Madame Baron are now in the castle. The servants have already prepared enough rich food, waiting to serve the masters to eat. As one of the owners of the castle, this is a beautiful enough morning, and the nobility of identity is enough for Tang Eggs Ramsden, the Baron's youngest son, to indulge in the aroma of the dream bakery and the dazzling supermarket cooked food and various carbonated drinks. It was just that the knock on the door at this time was a little suffocating. Tang, who was already very serious about getting up, had to open his eyes, thinking about hanging the person who knocked on the door outside at night on which crook neck tree. Seeing that the sound did not stop, and no servants outside the door stopped him, Tang had to climb out of the warm bed, with a mess of hair on his head, and sat up with a smile that did not reach his eyes. Before opening the door, the image of a reckless brother who likes to play swords had already appeared in his mind. Opening the door of the room, Tang looked drowsy, but looked at the tall man in front of him with anger. "Dear brother, if there is nothing else, can you let your brother have a good rest? Or do you prefer to have the maids knocking on your door one after another in the middle of the night?" "Ha ha, Tang." The elder brother, Owen Ramsden, grinned and slapped his younger brother on the shoulder, making the other party grin but not showing any remorse. He stuffed the broadsword in his hand, which he had prepared in advance and was not much shorter than himself, into the hand of his newly awakened brother, and seemed not to realize the other party's murderous gaze at all, and said, "Father taught us that physical exercise is a day-to-day process, and self-discipline itself is a very good quality. Oh, I want to remind you that you have really overslept today, and our mother is waiting for us to have dinner." Tang. Taking a deep breath, Tang threw the broadsword back into the other party's arms with his physical fitness, and slammed the door shut without looking back. Owen smiled when he heard the angry voice coming from inside, picked up the broadsword and turned to leave. Entering the bathroom and looking at himself in the mirror, Tang's mind also heard a voice. "Host, the standard time is now 6:42. According to the itinerary plan, today we need to summarize the acting rules of the Master of Secrets. New task updated. Task: a small attempt by the Master of Secrets. Now that you have been promoted from Faceless Man to Master of Secrets, as one of the most bizarre abilities under the demigod, the extraordinary ability of the Master of Secrets can become a powerful force in your hands. Please control the spiritual silk of any spiritual being. Task completion. 31%, Task 2. 1, 2, 3, Wooden Man. How can a Master of Secrets not have his own secret puppet? Please hurry up and find a spiritual being that can be made into a secret puppet. Please remember that the quality of the secret puppet is also important. Make your own secret puppet. Task completion, 0/3. Main task. Main task 1, promote to sequence 4, Trick Magician. Main task 2. Recover the sequence 1 extraordinary characteristics and uniqueness of the Hermit and Perfectionist pathways. P.S. Do you need to switch to Mystic, Alchemist for sequence 4? Yes, yes. The last PS is completely unnecessary, thank you. Tang rolled his eyes. Do you want me to give you a live performance of turning into a caterpillar crawling on the ground? Everyone who has traveled through the secret knows that randomly changing pathways will really kill people. Even if you don't die, you will go crazy, and it will be the kind of crazy that is very miserable. Tang rubbed his eyebrows, washed up, and lay on the clean bed full of sunshine, lazy, still wanting to sleep. But after being disturbed just now, he no longer had the wish to put his hands together on his chest and peacefully pass away. Thinking of the system again, he sighed silently. It's been almost 18 years. 18 years ago, he died in a car accident in his original world. When he opened his eyes again, he came here, an absurd world. Why is it the Lord of Mysteries? Although encountering time travel gave him a second life, which is already something that cannot be sought, but even if it is a two-dimensional world like Naruto or Bleach that is more combat-oriented, He would think it would be much better. At least in those worlds, being an ordinary person can also survive. But it happens to be the Lord of Mysteries, a world with a Lovecraftian style. Gods, evil gods, cultists, a world with too many death elements. Most of the bottom people have no chance to live well. And he wants to live, cherishing the second life that is not easy to come by. Again silently inhaling and exhaling, Tang sat up from the bed. Really, too bad. The latest novels are first published. Host, there is no need to feel too bad. The voice in his head kept chattering. Maybe you can choose mystic, alchemist, Tang, hee. Tang. Is this thing a part of that something? He couldn't remember what that thing was. Only a very vague impression. Honestly, after entering this world and becoming a diviner through potions, he couldn't remember it either. It wasn't that he forgot, but after integrating into this world, his spirituality warned him that remembering it would have terrible consequences. It also includes many things. Spirituality automatically filters out knowledge that cannot be accessed for him, making him unable to remember. This is a kind of protection. After all, in this world, knowledge beyond one's own position will really bring death. And this system that was born with him, has been pushing him towards the craftsman and the seeker pathway. Tui, unlucky. A few days ago, Tang, who returned from the sea after being promoted to a sequence 5 feet master of secrets through the mermaid's voice, looked at the bright sunshine outside the window and once again slowly exhaled a breath of turbid air. Okay, there is still at least 13 or 400 years before the Fifth Epoch, before the descent of that, Mr. Fool. With such a large span, how should I spend it? He stroked his chin, the Sequence 3 ancient scholar. The ritual is to break away from reality for at least 300 years. Forget it, I'll think about the Sequence 3 thing later. Tang thought while sitting at the dining table preparing to enjoy breakfast. Host, you can also choose Mystic Alchemist. Tang said, lovingly, don't force me to slap you when I'm in the best mood of the day. System. Reason, host. The protagonist diviner pathway comes with a mysterious system. Undoubtedly, Baroness Ramde is a very respectable lady with aristocratic qualities. The atmosphere at the dining table wasn't too stiff. Boyance Lansworth Ramde, with her graceful and luxurious bearing, set down her teacup. She looked at her eldest and second sons with loving eyes. Listening to her eldest son eloquently describing the interesting adventures at sea a few days ago, and then watching her second son lower his head, poking at the vegetables he didn't like in his plate, muttering something under his breath. Her expression became even more gentle. It seems that this voyage was indeed very interesting. However, Lady Boyanka suddenly changed the subject. Tang, as a diviner, had already sensed something and buried his head even lower. Here it comes, the terrifying, motherly love and filial piety. A few days ago, Viscount Odwell visited your father. Lady Boyanka looked at her eldest son, who suddenly froze, seemingly remembering something, his face stiffening. You are old enough to discuss marriage, Owen. Your father and I are very satisfied with Viscount Odwell's youngest daughter. Saying this, she covered her mouth and chuckled. Of course, your father and I are not pedantic people. The goddess also encourages marriage, encourages equal and normal interactions between the sexes. It all depends on you. If you don't like Viscount Odwell's youngest daughter. The Loen kingdom, established by the Augustus family, mostly believes in the 3 orthodox deities: the goddess of the night, the god of craftsmen, and the lord of storms. Evidently, Lady Boyanka is a devout believer in the goddess of the night. The goddess's scriptures are always so gentle. Owen smiled awkwardly, then looked at his younger brother, blinking helplessly. Tang, who had just been disturbed from his sweet dream this morning, only raised his head and gave a helpless expression. Rescue. Not adding fuel to the fire is already a blessing. Mother, I'm done eating. In order not to let the fire burn him as well, Tang wiped the corner of his mouth with a handkerchief, ignoring his brother's somewhat stiff face, and prepared to go for a walk. Speaking of which, Tang might also need you to take a good look at him, mother. Seeing that there was no way out, Owen could only try to divert the matter in another direction. Owen is right, Tang, you also need to consider it carefully, not only your background, but also. Lady Boyanka looked at Tang, who suddenly quickened his pace, with a smile, and said the same. Tang fled the restaurant as if his life depended on it, and secretly gave Owen the middle finger before leaving. Owen also returned a gesture that seemed to be a secret between the two of them. Tang, I kind of want to punch him. Refusing the idea of the servants following, stepping out of this castle with a medieval feel, what came into view was a small town with a small population and not many resources to use. Ramde town, this is his father, Baron Wilbert Ramde's territory, a place located in the center of the surrounding towns, serving as a trading point for the nearby villages, barely worthy of being called a town. And this Baron Ramde, the man who was a tramp for a long time after losing his memory, joined the army to become a knight of the Loen Empire in order to be worthy of the current lady, a noble lady at the time, and won many merits. He was eventually granted the title of Baron, and only then did he get this not-so-good territory, as well as some impoverished civilians in the territory. Tang breathed in the fresh air. This place, which has not yet developed steam engines, and mostly remains in agriculture, similar to the European Middle Ages, although not convenient, has a much better environment. Okay, today's task is to strengthen the understanding of the seer pathway's acting method. Although I have already learned about the acting rule of the seer in advance, and have completely watched the acting method of the seer from a third-person perspective. Tang pondered for a moment, his left teeth lightly collided twice, entering the spirit vision state. Countless illusory black lines appeared from all around, thin and numerous, densely packed. They stretched to the infinite distance above his head, seemingly reaching the end of the void, eerie and terrifying. Honestly, if someone with trypophobia saw this scene, they would probably have an attack on the spot. And it's quite sand-dropping. Opening the system panel, Tang roughly browsed his status. Although the dog system has been telling him to change pathways, it must be said that sometimes this system is quite useful. For example, you can see the specific percentage value of your health bar in spirituality, you can see the degree of digestion, oh, yes, and there is one more thing. He really doesn't have a moving warehouse like the gray fog. If he wants to carry more extraordinary items or keep some precious materials, it should have been a more troublesome thing. However, since advancing to sequence 6, reaching the mid-sequence, the system has opened a 10-slot system space warehouse, and the system space warehouse can be expanded by 10 more slots for each sequence advanced. After becoming sequence 5, the slots naturally expanded to 20. It is convenient to take, and hard to guard against. In some situations, it is more convenient than gray fog. The newest and most complete novels are first published at Uptak. After all, magicians don't do unprepared performances. Tang looked at his space slots and took out a magical item from them. The slender iron chain was close to his left arm. The tip of the iron chain was inlaid with a red gemstone. They were wrapped around his wrist, disguised as an accessory, and casually blocked by the wide sleeves. Tang walked out of the castle, intending to take a walk in the town today. Generally speaking, nobles and their subjects are not close to each other. This is not only because the nobles do not want those poor people to hinder their own lives, but also to prevent the various domestic garbage generated by the poor people from having the opportunity to affect the appetite and eyes of the nobles. People who can clean themselves every day and clean up garbage regularly are rare in the Loen Kingdom, especially since the situation in the Loen Kingdom has not yet stabilized, and there are constant frictions with surrounding countries. 1/3 of the people cannot meet their basic needs. Starting from the castle, if you don't take a carriage, it takes about 20 minutes to reach the market at a slow pace. Each spirit thread in the spirit vision has a different owner. Tang, who used the Faceless's extraordinary ability to change his appearance, familiarized himself with the world in the eyes of the puppet master while also making a divination for himself. The iron chain wrapped around his left wrist became the medium of the pendulum. When he noticed the abnormality of the pendulum, he frowned slightly. There is a certain danger, but it is not high. Tang analyzed, is someone infiltrating here? Not a high sequence, even should not be as high sequence as me, low mid-sequence, or an extraordinary profession that leans towards physical combat. Lam Town, it was more like a market than a town. In the town, there was a not-so-grand church, with only one clergyman acting as a priest, presiding over Sunday services and Mass. At this moment, the clergyman belonging to the goddess of the night was not in the church listening to the prayers of the goddess's followers. He was in a corner of the market, surrounded by stinky water and various garbage, looking down at a corpse with its internal organs removed, his face not looking too good. In the kingdom of Loen, which was not stable, and without the profession of police, cases of robbery and murder in aristocratic territories were mostly handled privately by the nobles themselves. If there was a church in the area, with clergymen, sometimes nobles who hated trouble would occasionally donate a considerable sum of pounds to the local church, to handle similar cases on their behalf. The kingdom of Loen was just a newly established country, and those lords focused more on cities under major construction like Backland and Constant, and they would not pay too much attention to places like Lamtown. Another one died. How many is this? In a corner of the market, in a dark alley with a wall at the end, the knight holding a torch to illuminate the area, belonging to the nobility and stationed in Lamtown as the captain of the knights, also looked grim. He looked at the corpse on the ground and couldn't help but ask in a low voice, "Father Fetal, what's the situation?" Like the corpses found in the past few days, the internal organs were taken out. It looks like the victim of a serial killer. Father Fetal sighed. The white-haired old man closed the woman's eyes, and prayed in a low voice, "May her soul return to the embrace of the goddess after death." This was the third murder case in the market. The first case occurred 10 days ago. The victim was a nightclub girl. When she was found in a cheap rental inn, she was covered in blood, and her organs were almost emptied. The innkeeper didn't realize something was wrong until the next day, and reported it to the night guard stationed in the town. The night guard quickly sealed off the scene, and of course, they didn't bother the Lord's life because of this, but invited the priest of the goddess of the night church to conduct a preliminary inspection. Obviously, the girl whose internal organs had been emptied was already dead, and the killer might have been other people who checked in that day. The cheap rental inn did not have identity registration, and apart from the people who had not checked out the next day, it was impossible to find other suspects that day. The second case occurred 5 days ago. Mrs. Giovanna Spin of the bakery was killed. She died in her bed at home, and also showed a bloody corpse to everyone by emptying her internal organs. The baker's husband, Hyacinth Spin, almost collapsed, and so did their 2 children. But the result still did not find the whereabouts of the criminal. Now is the third case, also emptying the internal organs. The knight captain hesitated, wondering whether to report this matter to the Lord. To be honest, the death of a few residents or slaves in the territory of the nobles was not a big deal, but the premise was that this matter would not be too big. Now 3 people have died, but they have not even found the shadow of the murderer. If they continue to die, he can't guarantee whether the Lord will be angry because of this. After all, there is a serial killer in the territory, and they have not taken any measures to catch this guy. There is not even any clue. Tang, through the extraordinary ability of the faceless man, changed his face to a mediocre one. At this time, he pieced together what he wanted to know from the chatter of the surrounding market merchants and customers. Serial killings, and each corpse resulted in missing internal organs. He pondered, the advancement ceremony of the Apostle of Desire. If so, then the one here at this time should be sequence 6, a demon. Just as he thought of this, Tang suddenly turned his head. Spiritual warning told him that someone had suddenly left and wanted to escape from here. That demon. Come back to take a look at the crime scene and admire his masterpiece. Release new task. The system's voice also confirmed Tang's thoughts. Every demon is a terrifying extraordinary person proficient in anti-divination and able to foresee danger in advance. Control the demon. He just noticed his malice and immediately prepared to leave. Such a quick reaction. To deal with this kind of extraordinary person who can detect malice in advance, it seems that the only way to solve the opponent is by chance. After all, this is his own territory, and Tang cannot let such an extraordinary person whose pre-sequence is a serial killer escape. He tapped his teeth twice, turned on the vision of the spiritual body thread, distinguished the direction in which the demon was fleeing, confirmed that the other party had not escaped the range he could control, and reached out and grabbed in the void. At the same time, he created a large number of illusions, shielding the perception of the surrounding people, and used flame jump to quickly flash among the surrounding flames. The demon sensed the danger. In this era, extraordinary people are not uncommon, and these wild extraordinary people never make any hidden measures to cover up the fact that they are extraordinary people. At most, they will disguise a series of rituals required for promotion as everything done by a crazy murderer, in order to deceive others. The latest novel is first published at. Demons don't care how many people will die because of their actions. If they can, they are happy to let these ordinary people block the knife for themselves. For the demon who suddenly started to flee, the surrounding people exclaimed and immediately scattered. He quickly left the range of the market. The knight captain behind him realized something was wrong and had already led people out, but obviously the speed was not as fast as the demon. The demon's speed was not slow, but his speed slowed down and stagnated in the next second. Through the spiritual body thread, Tang initially mastered the other party's body. This process takes 20 seconds, and the demon can run far enough in these 20 seconds. There are not many people around here, and people have avoided the frantically fleeing demon due to their instinct to seek advantages and avoid disadvantages, and have inadvertently saved their lives. There were no flames around for Tang to jump over. He threw out the iron chain wrapped around his left wrist, with a ruby inlaid at the end. The iron chain flew towards the demon at an extremely fast speed, and the demon's movements were half a beat slower due to the manipulation of the spiritual body thread, and was directly hit by the iron chain. The iron chain, which was clearly not thick, made the demon with thick skin and a strong body stagger, almost falling to the ground. He transformed quickly. A huge 3-meter-high monster, whose body seemed to be erupting with magma-like lava, suddenly turned around and rushed towards Tang's direction. Tang stood on the spot, neither dodging nor flashing. Die! The demon language word full of madness rushed straight into Tang's body at a terrifying speed. His body was suddenly covered with rust, but it gradually turned into a white paper figure, and his figure disappeared on the spot. Warehouse props consumed. Paperman remaining, 11. The iron chain, adorned with rubies at the end, wrapped around the demon's powerful body. The crimson-skinned demon was about to utter another vile word when Tang, who had somehow flashed to the other side, realized his filthy sound was stuck in his throat. He was like a dud cannonball, and the iron chain seemed to have a life of its own, constantly binding him and digging into his flesh. Mystery weakens, reality strengthens. A miraculous item, the fetters of sin, it was fixed to possess only one extraordinary ability, to weaken the mystery of the bound target, correspondingly diminishing all extraordinary abilities, including the body mutated by the demon's power. This corresponded to the sequence 6 of the seer pathway, the extraordinary ability of the judge. Tang continued to manipulate the spirit body threads. Under the effect of this extraordinary item, the demon had to resist the manipulation of the spirit body threads while forcefully trying to break free from the extraordinary item binding him. No, this won't do. If this continues, Tang simulated the sound of an air bullet being fired. Bang! The bullet struck the demon's head, and his iron chain-bound body trembled. Out of fear, his eyes turned into goat-like horizontal pupils. He roared loudly, trying to break free from the iron chain with his physical strength. But all these actions, from the moment he realized his situation, to devising a corresponding plan, and then implementing it, were constantly delayed and stagnated by the manipulation of the spirit body threads. The possibility of his escape had been greatly reduced. Tang didn't continue to conjure air bullets. The intense pain would weaken the manipulation of the spirit body threads. He watched the struggling demon expressionlessly, constantly strengthening the spirituality supplied to the iron chain in his hand. With the extraordinary item of the seer pathway, coupled with his own manipulation of the spirit body threads, sequence 5 against sequence 6 was a foregone conclusion. Slowly, after 5 minutes, Tang raised an eyebrow and stopped supplying spirituality to the iron chain in his hand. The demon, who had returned to his original appearance, stood motionless in place. Task progress updated. Task 1. Marionettist's Little Experiment. Now that you have advanced from faceless to marionettist, one of the most bizarre abilities below the demigod level, the extraordinary ability of the marionettist can become a powerful force in your hands. Please control the spirit body threads of any being with a spirit. Task completion. 100%. Reward has been issued, please check. Task 2. Red light, green light. How can a marionettist not have their own marionette? Please hurry and find a being with a spirit that can be made into a marionette. Please remember, the quality of the marionette is also important. Create your own marionette. Task completion, 1/3. Marionette, Tank Buria. Potion sequence. Abyss, sequence 6, Demon. Display the corresponding potion formula. Tang raised an eyebrow again, but didn't say anything, nor did he ask the system to show him the sequence 6 potion formula. Buria, a demon of the blood worship sect? The blood worship sect was a loose alliance formed by worshipping demons, established in the Fourth Epoch. They controlled the criminal, that is, the abyss pathway, worshipping the evil god, dark side of the universe, believing that he was the master of the abyss, the destroyer who would inevitably erode and corrupt the entire real world, the entire vast universe. And the demons of this secret organization were also obsessed with spreading the demon faith, creating many bloody cases. However, judging from the rituals of this pathway, they create bloody cases not only to spread the demon faith, but also to allow themselves to advance smoothly. After controlling this demon who was wreaking havoc in his territory, Tang pondered for a moment and decided to take this newly created demon home to take a look. Just as he put away the iron chain in his hand and prepared to go back, movement came from the forest not far away. Tang turned to look and saw a middle-aged man with bronze skin, black hair, brown eyes, and wearing close-fitting leather armor riding a horse over. He didn't know how long he had been there, father. Inside the castle, newly built and made of black-green stone bricks, Baron Ramde had a gentle expression in the study, but between his brows, there was an undeniable solemnity left over from his service to the Loen kingdom. This Baron Ramde was a legendary figure who once ruled the southern continent, the Balam Empire, but for some special reason, he constantly entered a cycle of amnesia, memory recovery, and then amnesia again, and memory recovery again. And now, this former high-ranking extraordinary being, the current Baron Ramde, placed the brewed tea in front of his child. The latest and fastest novels are all on, thank you. Tang took the teacup and sipped the water in the teacup. Although he had already been subjected to the suffocating diet of this world, and as a baron, he had a lot of wealth in his hands, the bitterness of the tea still made him miss his former world. It seems that this trip to the sea has brought you a lot of help, Baron Ramde said with a smile. Yes, I have seen many creatures that I have never seen before, Tang said with a smile. Mermaids are now not uncommon in the Fog Sea and Sonya Sea, and they have not been extensively farmed by the Church of the Night Goddess. The advancement ceremony of the marionettist is not too difficult. That's good, Baron Ramde also smiled. The situation in the Loen kingdom is not very peaceful now. The king and the nobles are trying to get more slaves, land, and wealth from other countries. It is a good thing to have the strength to protect yourself, Tang. Looks like a war is about to break out again. Loen, the country established by Augustus, has not been peaceful in recent years. It has frictions with neighboring countries, with Fursak, and with Intis. In general, it is nothing more than food, money, land, and labor. But this should be controllable. After all, the seven gods' churches will definitely prevent large-scale population extinction. Tang sighed, but that should be a headache for those nobles. Even if the king wants to conscript, this kind of thing shouldn't blow to us. In this rural area, even the king's orders may not be very useful. After all, the generals are outside, and the king's orders may not be followed. I'm leaving here soon, Baron Ramde said. I plan to go to the southern continent. Ah, Tang's heart sank slightly. He knew that his father was already in the stage of memory recovery, and the other party had never concealed anything. He seemed to feel guilty about them, but he still had to do it. Tang understood that it should be his own duty, and a certain curse suffered as a descendant of the god of death. The process of constantly searching for memories and constantly losing memories. I understand, Tang said. Father, what do you want me to do? Protect your mother well, Baron Ramde said. I might be gone for a long time, and I can't be sure what I'll do when I remember something again. He leaned back in the high-backed chair behind him, as if thinking of something. His voice was very low, as if he wanted to say something, but soon only a sigh remained. Tang, my child. Tang, who had not had his knowledge of the fall of the god of death and the subsequent arrangements he left behind blocked, was very clear about what they symbolized. Tang was silent for a moment, then nodded. He didn't stop it, and he couldn't stop it. He was only sequence 5, not an angel, let alone a god. Host. The rules brought by the sealed artifact open black lens bracket shackles of sin close black lens bracket are as follows. The sealed artifact open black lens bracket shackles of sin close black lens bracket is a sealed artifact made from the Beyander characteristic left behind by a sequence 6 of the arbiter pathway, judge. It has the same status and Beyander characteristics as sequence 6, but if it is made using the artisan module that comes with the system, the Beyander abilities retained by the sealed artifact made using Beyander characteristics will all match Tang's imagination, and the negative effects will also be within his tolerance. The system has only one constant Beyander ability for this sealed artifact: weakening the mystical and strengthening reality. Under the condition of only one constant Beyander ability, the power of this rule is such that even a Beyander who is about to digest the sequence 6 potion would find it difficult to break free in a short period of time. This has a very high degree of compatibility with the abilities of a marionettist. Weakening the mystical and strengthening reality not only means that the Beyander's own Beyander abilities will be greatly weakened, but also that the sealed artifacts, charms, etc. on their body will also be weakened, thereby delaying the time to break free and assisting the marionettist's spirit threads in manipulating others. Of course, the negative effect it brings is that within 24 hours after use, the user needs to abide by the rules set by the open black lens bracket shackles of sin close black lens bracket. If the rules are violated, severe punishment will be suffered. Tang. It's like a rules horror story. Current rule. Family is a warm harbor. Filial piety from fathers, eternal love from mothers, and fraternal respect are necessary to maintain family harmony. Time remaining: 22 hours 59 minutes and 52 seconds. Tang. It's even more like a rules horror story. And there's only one. It doesn't seem difficult. Host, you are obviously being too optimistic. Walking out of the study, Tang planned to try out his marionette. His current mood was like a child who had just received a toy, retaining some curiosity. Tang. Not long after walking, Tang saw his dear silly, brother. Fake smile.jpg. You better have something important. Tang coughed lightly a few times. His spirituality told him that it was best not to entangle himself too much now. Father is looking for you. Owen was about to say something but was interrupted. Hearing that his father was looking for him, he didn't say any more nonsense and said seriously, Mother wants to go to Tingen. Go with Mother later. Tingen hasn't been very peaceful recently. Tang gave an okay gesture. Owen turned and walked into the study where Baron Ramde was, and Tang walked towards the garden. Since giving birth to him, Mrs. Ramde had not been feeling well. She didn't like to go out and only maintained the most basic social interactions. Knowing this, his father planted many of Mrs. Ramstead's favorite flowers in the castle's garden. Since the castle was filled with flowers, Mrs. Ramstead had spent a long time in the garden, tending to the precious flowers that she and Baron Ramde had cultivated together. On the way, Tang summoned his marionette. As a marionette, its essence is almost equivalent to a dead Beyander, and it can be easily stored in the system space. Tisk tisk, this system is quite convenient. Host, are you interested in switching pathways to Mystic Alchemist? Tang. Get lost, thank you. Look at how polite he is, even saying thank you after being cursed. Alright. The system quickly disappeared again. Tang looked at the tall man, obtained his vision, experienced immersive VR, and recalled the basic information of the other party's sequence. The most powerful aspect of a sequence 6 demon is their ability to demonize and to foresee malice and danger in advance. A demonized demon is quite powerful compared to other sequence 6s who are not very good at melee combat. Of course, this can't catch up with the sequence 6 of the warrior pathway, Dawn Knight, but it is already much stronger than his own squishy caster, the marionettist. The newest and most complete novels are published first. In addition to the system space being able to store and release at will, if someone tries to output damage up close next time, then let them feel what it's like to be rubbed on the ground by a suddenly appearing demon. Tank Buria, true to his name, naturally has to take on the responsibility of a tank. However, the Buria family, are there traces of the blood sacrifice sect operating nearby? When should I report it to the Church of the Evernight Goddess? Hopefully, they will pay attention. Tang, who had learned a lot from books, naturally and reasonably began to fleece the goddess's wool. In the current Fourth Epoch, the Pale Disaster and the war launched by the god of death along with the primordial witch had already ended. The gods no longer walked the earth, and the churches of the gods were being rebuilt one after another in every city of the Loen kingdom. And now, the Nighthawks have not yet been formed, and the police system of the Loen kingdom has not yet appeared. There are still many cultists, evil god rituals, and factors related to extraordinary powers lurking in the Loen kingdom, which is in a state of disrepair. Even if they want to manage it, the church is sometimes indeed unable to do so. In the end, the newly born kingdom is strong on the outside but weak on the inside. It has not yet established good diplomatic relations with the surrounding countries, and only needs a fuse to ignite. Even the goddess does not have the ability to build churches all at once, nor does she have the ability to eliminate every cultist. After all, gods have things that gods need to do, and human affairs should be left to humans. After looking at his marionette, Tang put it away and came to the garden. Inside the garden, Tang walked to Mrs. Ramde, who was sitting in the gazebo, and looked at his mother, who was fiddling with the flowers in the pots. "Mother, when are you planning to go to Tingen?" Mrs. Ramde paused, stood up, and looked at her child with a smile. "In a while. Your father might go too, Tang. I've been having a dream lately." "What dream?" Tang was stunned for a moment and asked subconsciously. "I don't remember very clearly anymore, but I vaguely feel that it's not a very good dream." Mrs. Ramstead's eyes were smiling. She was just an ordinary person. The essence of dreams is enlightenment given by the spirit world. Logically speaking, even if an ordinary person's dream has omens of prophecy, it cannot guarantee accuracy. But Tang always felt that Mrs. Ramstead already knew something. Welcome to Fanfic Audiobook, your go-to place for immersive audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. Tingen was undergoing intense construction, adopting an attitude of revitalizing everything. Of course, there were no wide, smooth asphalt roads, no bright gas lamps, no underground water pipes, nor anything else that Tang remembered from the late modern era. Lacking the necessary knowledge, and with the world's technology tree not yet fully illuminated by Emperor Rosal, Tingen's development was somewhat limited. The carriage traveled on the stone road cleared by the city government. Early in the morning, Tingen had just experienced a heavy rain, and there was a lot of standing water on the muddy road. Conversely, there weren't many living people active, nor many traces of carriages. In this era, carriages were almost exclusively the transportation of nobles. Horses were precious resources, and carriages were one of the few tools available for long-distance travel. Those who could afford to keep horses invariably had ample land and wealth. Even barons often needed to rent carriages from other friendly nobles to maintain appearances. Frankly, Tang felt that the world depicted in the book was more akin to the period after the First Industrial Revolution. Although that era wasn't as convenient as modern times, having toilets and toilet paper was something that today's outhouses couldn't even dream of. Okay, he really felt like crying a little. Having experienced it firsthand, he realized that in the Fifth Epoch, before Emperor Rosal descended, initiated the Industrial Revolution, and reformed the entire world, the traces of the Fourth Epoch were even more primitive, pedantic, and cruel. There were quite a few corpses along the roadsides. Vagrants, slaves who died from infectious diseases, overwork, and various other causes, and the bodies of children abandoned by families unable to afford their expenses were not uncommon. They died at night, died in every day and night of starvation and madness, and would be cleared away the next day, sent to the church for free cremation. The remaining ashes would be thrown into the Tasik River. This was not a cremation culture brought by Emperor Rosal. In this world, the 7 major churches, who clearly understood the mysteries, had not yet accumulated enough time to dispose of the corpses of an entire city. Cremation was the most convenient and cheapest method. After all, living corpses, undead creatures born from corpses, were not non-existent. Cultists sometimes used large numbers of corpses to complete certain rituals that could have terrible consequences. These corpses that died along the roadsides will be cleared away soon, Tang said, lowering the carriage curtain and silently sighing in his heart. This era was truly a cannibalistic society. Of course, mostly slaves died. The carriage gradually entered a section of road with better conditions, and the number of vagrants and corpses around decreased significantly. This could be said to be the noble district of Tingen, the residence of high-ranking government officials and their families. Both the environment and other aspects were much better than the places they had passed along the way. Tang sent his mother to Viscount Baker's mansion. The Viscountess, Jenny Baker, was a close friend of Mrs. Boyanka. Upon arriving in Tingen, it was natural to pay a visit first to avoid being impolite. Baron Ramde didn't come along, and neither Mrs. Boyanka nor Tang were surprised. After performing a divination to ensure his mother's safety, he also planned to go out for a stroll. A Sequence 6 demon from the Blood sect had appeared in Tingen. As a Beander who could be considered a mid to high-level member of this secretive organization, his disappearance meant that the Blood sect should and would likely take action to find this missing demon. I do hope they come knocking. Of course, if it's a Sequence 4 or higher demigod, then I'll have to let Father handle it. Otherwise, no matter how many came, they would likely become his hanged puppets. However, the danger premonition that came with reaching Sequence 6 should keep the higher-ups of the Blood sect away from him in Ram Town. Tisk, that demon was really unlucky. At the same time, Tang began to summarize his puppet master's code of conduct. From my understanding, the core principle of a puppet master lies in the puppets. As a qualified puppeteer, a puppet master should try to hide behind the curtain behind the puppets, focusing the audience's attention on the wooden puppets on stage, rather than the puppeteer behind them. At the same time, in a puppet show, each puppet has its own code of conduct, identity, status, ability, habits, and needs to highlight characteristics, distinguishing it from the puppeteer, and making a deep impression on the audience. In making a deep impression, even making the audience feel that it is a living person, completely different from the puppeteer, becoming two independent individuals, will be the most core part. Open black lens bracket puppet master close black lens bracket acting method code updated. 1. As a puppeteer who resides behind the scenes, personally appearing on stage is extremely impolite behavior, please try to avoid such behavior from occurring. 2. Each puppet is an independent individual appearing on stage, please arrange the order of appearance of each puppet and create a script for them. The current manipulation limit of the puppets is 100 meters, constantly approaching, but if you really want to stay behind the scenes, this distance is sometimes not enough. The carriage continued on its way as he thought. At some point, he saw a huge tent with red and yellow pointed tops, supported by heavy curtains. A circus. The latest and most popular novels are first published here. There weren't many people in the circus at this time. Those who could afford to visit the circus had some savings in their homes, while the truly wealthy young masters and ladies had more decent entertainment and disdained watching cheap circus performances with commoners. Of course, if they were really interested, they should probably have the entire circus move into their territory to perform for them alone. Tang paid a few copper pennies and got the opportunity to visit, but after taking his seat, he found that the circus mainly featured clown performances, and large beasts such as lions, tigers, and black bears rarely appeared. It wasn't much different from when he was a Sequence 8, still a clown. It's a bit desolate. Tang looked around and saw that there were only a few scattered people in the entire circus, perhaps not even 20 or 30 spectators. A performance lasted about an hour, and the circus could perform at least 8 shows a day, but judging from the current situation, the income here was definitely not good, and might even be a loss-making business. The performance ended, and Tang enjoyed it. After all, there are only so many entertainment activities in this era. Being able to pass the time, oh no, being able to relax myself, is just watching circus performances and playing games like Fight the Landlord. As for paper books, for Tang, who didn't have much love for early literature, they were pretty good lullabies. After the circus performance ended, the guests gradually left the auditorium. Tang sat in place for a while before getting up, brushing past a black-robed man sitting in the adjacent seat. An audience, huh? Most of the acting methods of the Fool, pathways seemed to have a certain connection with the cheers and recognition of the audience. Tang considered this matter, focusing his gaze on his surroundings. He didn't notice the black-robed man behind him slightly turning his head, casting a glance in his direction at this dilapidated, pointed tent that seemed to be poorly managed. Tang shook his head and left. After working for nearly a day, the circus leader, Humphrey Duke, counted the amount of money taken in today, and could only sigh silently. It's getting worse every day, I don't know how long this circus can last. He thought wistfully. As the most important source of income for a circus, the price of tickets for customers, although he had set the price quite low, in this era of not having enough to eat, even a few pennies was more than many poor people were willing to pay. And staying in the same place for a long time will inevitably reduce the daily flow of customers. Customers are always picky. The circus has only a few things to offer, and even the most enthusiastic customers will get tired of it one day. But changing places, honestly, knowing some of the dark side of this world, Humphrey Duke felt that this was not appropriate, and besides, he didn't have enough money to support him leaving Tingen and traveling to other areas. The current venue has half a month left on its lease, and if he can't find a way to turn the situation around during this time, then the only consequence for the circus will be disbandment. But if it disbands, what will happen to these children? Ringmaster. A chubby little girl emerged from the backstage curtain, smiling sweetly. Humphrey Duke was stunned for a moment, then raised a smile and touched the other person's head, while magically taking out a not-so-sweet piece of candy from his pocket and handing it to her. Thank you, Ringmaster. The little girl took the candy with great surprise, but didn't eat it. Instead, she said, Ringmaster, a guest said they wanted to chat with you. A guest? Humphrey Duke frowned in confusion. Please, bring him over. He got up to see who it was. The visitor was a man of medium build wearing a black hood. No one knew what the guest and the ringmaster talked about, only that when the ringmaster walked out of the tent, he had an unspeakable look of excitement on his face, holding a black box in his hands. Tang returned to Viscount Baker's mansion, found Mrs. Boyanka, and left with her. Afterwards, the mother and son went to the newly opened commercial street. The commercial street was quite satisfactory, without the stench of corpses, and without homeless people begging everywhere. The two bought a lot of things, while planning to return to their territory from Tingen City before dark. Staying overnight outside was not an option. Neither Tang nor Mrs. Boyanka had any intention of doing so. After walking for a day, and the fatigue of traveling, Mrs. Boyanka was also a little tired. The carriage was very silent along the way. Tang unwrapped the things he bought on the road, put some black-tinged candy into his mouth. He chewed the candy, which was said to be the sweetest candy in Tingen City, with a blank expression, and cursed inwardly, he had been deceived. Even so, he still chewed the candy with his good teeth until it crunched. Mrs. Boyanka looked at her youngest son in confusion. Tang immediately handed the candy in his hand to his mother. Mrs. Boyanka was puzzled. Mrs. Boyanka smiled, and accepted the feeding from her youngest son. It seems that the schedule for refining sugar does need to be brought forward a bit. Nothing dangerous happened during this period, and the carriage safely drove back to the castle. Perhaps the demons, dangerous perception saved themselves, and they had no intention of rushing up to their deaths. Tang expressed disappointment about this. System. Not enough secret puppets. I can only control one secret puppet now. If there are more, I won't be able to control them. So even if they came, he could only kill them, take out the extraordinary characteristics, and see what magical items the systems, artisan, could make. Then you can consider the mystic, alchemist, so you will never have to worry about the number of secret puppets. Tang, can you become a secret puppet? System. No. Tang. Returning to the castle, which was entirely built of black-green stone bricks, Tang returned to his room to rest. I think I should make something in advance. What do you think, system? He shouldn't be leaving here in a short time, and many things that he didn't consider before can be carefully considered in the process of digesting the potion. The latest novels are published first. Now it seems that he can't let Rosal the Great do everything. That would take many years, and he doesn't think he can wait. For example, things like paper. In addition, the Faceless Potion also needs to be prepared. Whether it is to find the extraordinary characteristics left by other Faceless or to prepare the potion himself, it will take time. Moreover, the Faceless ritual involves a Beyonder at the demigod level, which also takes a lot of time. Once he enters this level, his life level will also be transformed, becoming a demigod and half-human being. Relevant knowledge has been prepared. Host, if you need it, the seer will be of greater help to you. Are you talking about the God of Craftsmen? That's one way to go. Cooperating with the Church of the God of Craftsmen is not impossible, Tang thought, although this is a bit of a snatch of Rosal the Great's role. But he has always been avoiding these orthodox churches. Antigonus is now being frantically hunted down by the forces of the Goddess of the Night Church. As Sequence 5 of the Fool pathway, if he is noticed, he may also be implicated. Moreover, there are now 2 copies of the Sequence 1 potion at Antigonus's place, and the uniqueness is also there. The other potion has not yet been released by the great existence above the spirit world. I don't have to worry about Sequence 1, after all, I'm not even a demigod yet. He took a bath, stuffed the chains on his body back into the system space, and was about to climb into bed and wriggle around like a maggot without any image, releasing his nature, when the door was knocked on. The personal maid said very softly, "Young Master Eggers, young Master Owen is looking for you." At this hour, Tang, can I chicken beep him? Family is a warm harbor, fatherly love, motherly kindness, brotherly respect, in order to maintain family harmony. The system's pretentious electronic voice sounded. Good heavens, really good heavens, the negative effects of the magical item, he had forgotten about this. Although somewhat unwilling, Tang looked at his large bed, and between choosing to defy the rules and accept the punishment, and chat and endure, without strangling the oblivious guy, he tearfully chose the latter. After all, his magical items were somewhat mischievous. System, people are just cheap. Tang was speechless and secretly vowed that he would strangle this system sooner or later. No, he should hang it from the ceiling as his marionette. He. Tang opened the door expressionlessly. Owen, standing outside, was dressed in a linen shirt, looking like he was ready to rest. He was holding a wooden box, his expression solemn, but in Tang's eyes, he still looked like a mysterious and annoying jerk. Tang glanced at the personal maid beside him. The maid bowed to him and then closed the door. What's wrong? What did father tell you? Owen didn't speak, first handing the box in his hand to Tang. Tang took it and opened the wooden box, seeing a still beating black heart inside. The black heart seemed to be alive, constantly contracting and expanding. When the wooden box was opened, the surrounding spirituality seemed to be rapidly dissipating, and the feeling of death and decay was continuously entering the real world through the heart as a bridge. Tang activated his spirit vision and scrutinized the things before him. System, identifying. One identification chance has been automatically consumed. Remaining identification chances, 139. Host, this item belongs to the Sequence 4 of the Eternal Sleeper pathway, the extraordinary characteristic of the Undying. Do you want to reverse analyze the Undying potion formula? This method requires consuming a variable number of identification chances. Note: analyzing the potion in this way requires a relatively high number of identification chances. Please choose carefully. No. Tang closed the lid, his eyebrows slightly raised. Father gave it to you. Yes. Owen sat down on the wooden chair in a bold manner. He also told me the advancement ritual and the Sequence 5 potion formula. As a high sequence angel, Baron Ramde had remembered many things. After gradually recovering his strength, it was not strange for him to obtain an extraordinary characteristic of Sequence 4 from somewhere and give it to his child to use as the main material for a potion. After all, for a high sequence angel, a child of the God of Death, although Sequence 4 potions were rare, they would always know where to find the corresponding main materials, corresponding extraordinary creatures, or directly the corresponding Sequence 4 Beyonders. But you are only Sequence 6, and you haven't even finished digesting it yet. Directly consuming the Sequence 4 potion formula will only turn you into a monster. Was giving Owen the Sequence 4 potion so early because father had already begun preparing for another memory loss treatment? Tang speculated on his father's thoughts and had some ideas of his own. So, I want you to help me make this, undying, extraordinary characteristic into a magical item. Owen said, you know very skilled craftsman, don't you? Tang's own magical items were all made using the system's craftsman module, so it was not strange for Owen to know that he had access to such channels. Tang placed the box on the table, nodded, and said, okay, this is not a big problem, but it will take some time. After all, the system's craftsman also needed some time to complete the processing. That's not a problem. Owen nodded, then continued, as for what it can be made into, I only hope the negative effects won't be too great. The negative effects of demigod-level magical items are generally not small, I'll do my best. Tang said. He had never used the system to make demigod-level items, so he didn't know what it would produce and couldn't guarantee anything. Also, I plan to join the army. Tang was surprised, join the army? Why? If you want to digest the potion, you are not of the hunter pathway, you don't need to go to the army to roleplay. You should go to the spirit world or the underworld to find undead creatures to roleplay. If he joined the army, it would be easy for the military and the Augustus family to discover clues and find something out. Father is leaving, Owen said, I plan to go to the kingdom's army and earn military merit. Owen had always wanted to become a knight when he was a child. He worked hard to obtain the title of nobility, and now it could be considered fulfilling his childhood dream. He clenched his fist, his expression firm. Brother, you and mother wait, your brother will earn a tingen back for you. Tang's mouth twitched. What are you daydreaming about in the middle of the night? Instead of this, you should pray to the night goddess and ask her to give you a good dream. Do you know how big the entire tingen is? Owen's expression collapsed, and before he could say anything, Tang sent him off, kicking him out of the bedroom. The newest novels are first published on the website. Hiss. Tang clapped his hands. All right, early to bed and early to rise makes a man healthy. The magical item will probably take about 10 days. I'll give it to you when it's done. If there's anything, let's talk about it tomorrow. Goodbye, I'm going to sleep. With a snap, the door closed. Owen. Tisk, so cold-blooded. Quietly lying on the bed, wriggling and crawling around, Tang sat up and looked at the wooden box left by Owen. He got up, picked up the wooden box, and stuffed it into the system warehouse along with the extraordinary characteristic inside. Recycling an extraordinary characteristic corresponding to undying has established a corresponding sealing method. System, open, craftsman. Tang sighed, picked up the silver knife from the corner of the table, and set up a spiritual wall to isolate the inside and outside. Craftsman has been opened. As the system's mechanical voice sounded, the surrounding atmosphere seemed to change. Centered on Tang, the entire room seemed to radiate strange wave-like fluctuations. Beams of light composed of countless basic particles appeared in the room, with alternating light and shadow, hazy and illusory. Tang sat on the bed, ignoring the various mystical symbols that constantly appeared around him, looked at the suddenly changed system interface, and mentally clicked on the sequence 4 extraordinary characteristic in the system warehouse, submitting it to the craftsman module. Sequence 4, Undying. The Undying possesses near infinite lifespan. Successfully advanced undying beings have a more powerful mastery of undead creatures. They are the controllers of death, initially mastering the concept of death, and can use doors to freely enter the spirit world and the underworld. They initially have the image of mythical creatures. Creatures that look at them without the protection of divinity will gradually become slaves of death. In contrast, the undying will face death every 60 years, and then be reborn in the dead body, as if newly born. Sequence 4, Undying. A certain amount of extraordinary characteristics with a weak spiritual imprint has been detected. Confirmed destruction. Yes. The hazy, distorted light and shadow suddenly shattered and disintegrated. In front of Tang, a beating heart gradually emerged, and then was filled with various occult symbols. Purifying the spiritual imprint of the previous high sequence being contained within the extraordinary characteristic. Remaining time, 3 hours 59 minutes and 52 seconds. Closing the craftsman interface, the surrounding spiritual light suddenly weakened and dissipated, then returned to nothingness, returning to normal. Remember the first website domain name TWKAN.com. 4 hours. Tang muttered in a low voice, deciding to process the extraordinary characteristic after shattering the spiritual imprint when he woke up. As demigod-level powerhouses, the extraordinary characteristics left behind by high sequences always contain some spiritual thoughts unique to the original extraordinary being. This is also one of the reasons why subsequent attempts to use similar extraordinary characteristics as the main ingredient for potions to advance to demigod often lead to loss of control. For such items, the system can spend a certain amount of time clearing the residual spiritual imprints in the extraordinary characteristics. His father had already processed it beforehand, but the system's disinfection was obviously more thorough and could remove all remaining potential dangers. Let's talk about it when it's done. Letting out a yawn, Tang peacefully lay on the bed, closing his eyes and sinking into darkness. Okay, host. A dreamless night. Early the next morning, Tang got up and looked at the system's processing results. The extraordinary characteristic that had been completely cleared of the internal residual spiritual imprint was quietly staying in the craftsman module, fixed in the void, still constantly and vigorously beating, but without the internal garbage. Spiritual imprint has been confirmed to be removed. Patting his head, Tang got up, pulled open the curtains, and looked at the rising sun outside. The warm sunlight sprinkled on the earth, adding bright edges to the surrounding scenery. Host, the current standard time is 6:21 a.m. According to the schedule, today requires performing the marionettist persona. New task has been updated. Task: open black lens bracket marionettist's performance close black lens bracket. Having advanced to marionettist, you have summarized certain performance rules. Please follow the performance rules and gradually improve the performance content to increase the digestion of the potion. Task completion, 3%. Task: open black lens bracket red light, green light close black lens bracket. How can a marionettist not have their own marionette? Please seize the time to find a spirited being that can be made into a marionette. Please remember that the quality of the marionette is also important. Create your own marionette. Task completion, 1/3. Main quest. Main quest 1. Open black lens bracket advance to sequence 4, trickster close black lens bracket. Main quest 2. Open black lens bracket recover the sequence 1 extraordinary characteristics, uniqueness, of the hermit, and perfectionist pathways, close black lens bracket. Task: open black lens bracket a small experiment by the marionettist close black lens bracket. Now that you have advanced from faceless to marionettist, as one of the most bizarre abilities below a demigod, the extraordinary ability of the marionettist can become a powerful force in your hands. Please control the spirit body threads of any spirited being. Task completion, 100% completed. Congratulations, host, appraisal count +5, remaining appraisal count, 144. Craftsman, usage count +1, remaining forging count, 13. Knowledge fragment quantity +100, remaining knowledge fragment quantity, 10,025. P.S. Do you want to convert sequence 4 to Mystic Alchemist? Yes, yes. No, don't you have a don't remind me again function? No, host. Tang yawned, entered the bathroom, washed up, sat cross-legged on the bed, and opened the craftsman module. All right, what should I make it into? He thought carefully for a moment. A weapon. But the Undying's extraordinary characteristics don't seem suitable for Owen's fighting style. The latest and most popular novels are first published here. A talisman, armor, protective gear, or something else easy to carry, forget it, I'll ask later. Judging from the speed of craftsman, in the past, demigod-level extraordinary characteristics will take 6 to 8 days to create. As for the constant extraordinary ability, Tang focused his gaze on the options provided by the system. Host, the available constant extraordinary abilities are as follows. Option A, constantly grant the Undying ability to connect with the spirit world and the underworld. By constantly granting this extraordinary ability, the user will be able to freely enter and exit the spirit world, open the gate to the underworld, and quickly release the large number of souls and undead accumulated within the underworld. The speed will be much faster than the gatekeeper of sequence 5. At the same time, the controlled souls and undead will be eroded by the power of the underworld, greatly increasing their strength. Option B. Constantly grant the undying control over death. By constantly granting this extraordinary ability, any living being that sees an item made with this extraordinary characteristic will suffer a mental shock equivalent to seeing the incomplete mythical creature form of the undying. Low sequences will die directly. Middle sequences, depending on their mental resistance, will suffer varying degrees of deathly stillness, pollution. The maximum effect can cause a considerable period of sleep, and the minimum will at least stiffen the body for more than a minute, during which there will be no thoughts, like a corpse. High sequences will be affected by things such as body stagnation. Sequence 3 and below will be controlled for at least 5 seconds, while angel level will be shortened to within 1 second. Option C. Obtain the undying power of immortality. By constantly granting this extraordinary ability, the user will not die easily, and the body's resistance to external damage will be greatly increased. Even if the body is damaged, it will slowly recover through the power of the spirit world and the underworld. The available negative effects for constant granting are as follows. Option A. Constantly grant the undying negative effects related to death. By constantly granting this negative effect, the user will be eroded by a certain degree of death. Their body will gradually step into death, and the spirit body will constantly dissipate. Even sealing this item will be difficult to easily recover within a short period of time. Option B. Constantly grant the undying negative effects related to memory. By constantly granting this negative effect, the user will always involuntarily forget some things. Of course, these things can be recovered through certain means, but as the user's usage time increases, the forgotten memories will become more and more numerous. Note, the maximum number of extraordinary abilities that can be constantly granted by the Craftsman module is 3, and the minimum number of negative effects that can be constantly granted is 1. When the number of constant extraordinary abilities is 3, the maximum power of each extraordinary ability is 70%. When the number of constant extraordinary abilities is 2, the maximum power of each extraordinary ability is 80%. When the number of constant extraordinary abilities is 1, the maximum power of each extraordinary ability is 100%. When the number of constant negative effects is 2, the maximum power of each negative effect is 67%. When the number of constant negative effects is 1, the maximum power of each negative effect is 100%. The extraordinary ability of undying doesn't conflict with its negative effects. One guarantees the user's physical strength is greatly enhanced during use, while the other gradually leads them into the embrace of the god of death under the curse of a demigod-level mystical item. The extraordinary ability it provides cannot offset the negative impact. Tisk, the impact is much greater than I thought. After all, it's sequence 4, a demigod-level mystical item. The system explained, currently, the level of artisan is not sufficient to create mystical items with lower negative impacts. So, host, please try to collect the extraordinary characteristics of the seers. What would happen if I ran into the god of craftsmen? Tang asked curiously. Of course, it would be to reclaim him. The system's electronic voice was eerie. Tang's mouth twitched, and he thought to himself, reclaim a god, you really dare to say that? He didn't know if the system had the ability, but he certainly didn't have the guts. Aren't you afraid of being struck dead by lightning? But that seems to be the authority of the storm. The food of this era wasn't particularly delicious, even among the nobles. Baron Ramde was about to leave. After finishing breakfast, Owen forcefully inserted himself between his father and mother, wanting to be a big, bright light bulb. He planned to ask about other questions related to the death pathway, including clues to the main materials for the Sequence 5 potion. Tang, however, was very filial, and pulled his dear brother away before he could do anything heroic. I forgot to ask yesterday, what kind of mystical item do you want to make? Owen struggled for a moment but didn't insist on his idea. He mumbled something and then said to Tang, can it be customized? You can talk about your preferences, so it's easier to focus on something during manufacturing and not waste a demigod-level extraordinary characteristic. If you put it that way. Owen pondered for a moment and said, I'd prefer to get a mystical item that leans towards the spirit world and the underworld. Of course, the name, Undying, should mean it can give people a very long lifespan, right? In theory, that's how it is. Tang nodded. He thought, then choosing all three options provided by the system shouldn't be a problem. As for the negative effects, let Father handle them in advance. After all, he's a Sequence 2 Earth Angel. Even if he has amnesia, his position is still there. He should have no problem dealing with mystical items of this sequence. After confirming this, Tang asked again, what kind of appearance do you want it to have? Owen glanced at the armor that was taken out as decoration around him. Tang. Okay then. Leaving the castle, Tang headed outside the town to first practice his ideas. He released the demon he had turned into a marionette yesterday and brought him to the town. Yesterday's supernatural battle didn't cause panic in the town. As long as you had some understanding, knowledge, or connections, and didn't limit yourself to your neighbors, it wasn't hard to find that there were always various strange and terrifying things in this world. However, with the existence of the church, priests, and lords, they would take the fall even if the sky fell, so they naturally didn't need to worry too much. Tang changed his appearance and, at the same time, manipulated the marionette to knock on Liar de Sen's door. Who is it? A short, dark, and fat man with a heavy accent opened the door while cursing. He was startled when he saw the tall man standing outside. You, what do you want to do? No, I mean sir, what would you like to buy? His initial dissatisfaction instantly turned into obsequiousness. The short, dark, and fat man mistook the other party for a knight stationed in the town. Although the other party wasn't wearing armor, it was hard to say that someone who could grow to this size in an era where even getting enough to eat was difficult had a poor family background. Seeing that the other party seemed to have misunderstood something, Tang didn't explain and manipulated the marionette to say, my master wants to buy a house. Good. Seeing that the other party didn't intend to make things difficult, Liar de Sen secretly breathed a sigh of relief. He welcomed the person in. Sir, what type of house does your master want to buy? But to be honest, I don't have many houses here, but most people prefer to rent rather than sell. Not many people in the town were willing to sell. Most people had lived here for generations. This was their homeland. Those without money would not be able to survive if they sold their houses. Those with money had no problem leaving a property in the town. More people were willing to rent out a single room in the house or directly rent out floor space. It needs to be bigger, and most importantly, there shouldn't be too many people around. It needs to be quiet enough and not easily disturbed by others. Tang said concisely. Although this was his family's territory, and all the land resources, mineral resources, and even human resources within the territory belonged to his family, limited buying and selling could not only promote local economic development, promote population flow, and increase tax revenue, but more importantly, he now needed to hide his identity and separate the connection between the marionette and the main body to prevent people from guessing. This was also one of the acting principles of a marionettist. He wouldn't come forward personally. Hearing the other party's request, Liar de Sen's smile became even brighter, and then he began to introduce. The houses were old and new, some far from the town and some in the town. Tang carefully selected a house near Allison Street, relatively close to his home. The former owner of the house had gone to Backland for some reason a long time ago and had listed the house for sale at Liar de Sen's before leaving. However, because the price was slightly expensive and it was a distance from the town, few people would buy this type of house. Taking a string of seemingly old keys, Tang controlled the marionette to enter the house and observed the surroundings through the marionette's vision. The house, built of black stone bricks, was constructed like a courtyard house. There was a lot of dust on the ground. The dust raised when he entered made Liar de Sen cough uncontrollably. Cough, I'm sorry, sir, cough, this place hasn't been cleaned for a long time. He very sycophantically welcomed the person in and then introduced the house. The general idea was that although this house was far from the town, the location wasn't good, it was a bit dilapidated, there was no furniture, and it was cold in winter and hot in summer, it was quiet enough, had a certain degree of privacy, and was big enough. It seemed to meet his requirements, but only to the extent that it met his requirements. His main body sat on a tree beside him, haggling with the other party with a twitching mouth. After some back and forth, the house was settled for a price of £210, and it came with the right to use a certain amount of land nearby. When he left, Liarda Sen also stuffed some money into the hands of this servant of someone's master. He knows how to handle things, this person. After taking over the house and using divination to confirm there were no problems, Tang thought for a moment and opened the system interface. System, are there any plants with high sugar content nearby? If not, what plants are suitable for planting here? He planned to try making sugar himself. After all, sometimes he needed to satisfy his appetite. Even the sugar used by nobles in this world was, in his eyes, indeed inferior to that of his previous world. Searching, automatically deducting 10 knowledge fragments. Remaining knowledge fragments, 10,015 feet. The system reported mechanically. The sugar manufacturing process in the Loen kingdom cannot be said to be exquisite. The sugar produced is not very sweet and is mixed with many impurities. To purify it, the impurity-free part is mostly supplied to the real nobles, not something commoners can enjoy. Moreover, as a strategic material, the buying and selling of sugar is generally controlled by the Loen kingdom, and there are few non-official places where sugar can be sold to the public. After a few minutes, the system spoke again. Relevant information found. Tang glanced at the information provided by the system. The thing with the highest sugar content and the easiest to produce nearby was something called thumb fruit, named because its shape resembled a human finger. However, because each thumb tree does not bear many fruits, and the growing environment is mostly too steep, few people recognize this tree, and few people eat this somewhat eerie-looking thing. Even if someone curiously brought it back to the town, few people paid attention to it when it occasionally appeared in the town's market. Looking at the appearance of the fruit, Tang also felt a chill. Are you sure this thing originally looked like this? Rather than it being contaminated by eating something dirty, like a rose bishop? Or did it grow crooked from listening to the true creator's rap every day in a godforsaken place? Yes, host. That's why the evolution of this world always makes people feel infinitely mysterious. Growing into this appearance might really just be a coincidence. Although he felt like he had received a mental shock, Tang still decided to go back and ask the guards to look for this finger tree in the forest. Although it really reduced his san. Returning to the castle, Tang took a set of armor that Owen often used, and then threw it, along with the sequence 4 uniqueness, into the craftsman module. Extraordinary ability and negative influence selected. Craftsman will permanently affix the extraordinary ability to your magical item. Permanently affix the undying ability related to the spirit world and the underworld. Permanently affix the undying control over death. Permanently affix the undying power of immortality. Craftsman will permanently affix the negative influence to your magical item. Permanently affix the undying negative influence related to death. Note, making extraordinary characteristics at the demigod level may cause unavoidable changes during the manufacturing process. Remaining manufacturing time, 239, 59, 21. Tang was a little surprised, it takes so long. 10 days. And what is this unavoidable change? He pointed out this point keenly. There was no such thing when making magical items before. It may be some kind of extraordinary ability mutation, becoming stronger or weaker, or it may have added some other attributes, such as affixing a new extraordinary ability, or perhaps the negative influence has increased. Of course, host, don't worry too much, this change will not be too much. The system explained. Okay. Tang closed the system interface, then I'll wait a few days for the finished product to see how it is. Baron Ramde was ready to leave. This place was not close to the southern continent, and the two continents were separated by a violent sea, but this was not a problem for him. After all, every high-sequence extraordinary person in the death pathway can travel through the spirit world, and the spirit world covers the entire world. Before leaving, he gave Tang a copper whistle. A copper whistle. Tang blinked, not sure if this was the future Lord of Mysteries thing. This can summon a messenger exclusive to me. Baron Ramde said gently, If there is any problem, you can blow the copper whistle, and then let the messenger bring a message to tell me. Okay, Father. Tang silently put away the copper whistle and asked the system to appraise the copper whistle. Item information. A simple copper whistle, it is made to be able to summon a messenger exclusive to the descendants of death. Extraordinary power. Summon messenger, interfere with divination. Negative influence. It will revive the dead bodies that have not been put to rest, and will attract various undead creatures within a certain range. PS. Maybe this cannot be considered a negative influence. Tang blinked again, it seemed to be true. Oh dear, how embarrassing. Baron Ramde left. Lady Boyanka seemed not to be greatly affected by this. She still followed her daily habits, staying in the garden most of the time, and had no intention of going out. She looked like a noble young lady who was ignorant of the world. In modern times, she could probably be labeled as a homebody. Tang asked someone to find the tree that bore the finger fruit. While waiting for the results, he also used dream divination to ask his spirituality, recalling those vague memories from his previous life. As a person from an information society, as long as he had a mobile phone, he would constantly receive new information. Even if he hadn't deliberately learned about similar things, as long as he had met them once, even if he didn't remember them at the time, they would be recorded by his own spirituality, or enter his subconscious, and he could remember them with special methods. If I took the college entrance examination in this state, I might be able to get 100 more points. Tang thought to himself. In the history of the Fourth Epoch, before Emperor Rosal had truly descended and those modern inventions and creations had not yet become commonplace, it was not difficult to improve life and earn some pocket money. After all, the space for improvement now is much greater than during Emperor Rosal's time. Moreover, he also planned to turn this territory into his base camp. At the same time, he would build the rituals he needed for his future advancement here, as well as the stable anchor and the needs of acting. Since he didn't plan to leave here in a short time, he also planned to act in advance. Sequence 4 of the Divinator pathway is called a trick magician, so what kind of acting can be called a trick magician? Weird, terrifying, bizarre, and thrilling, these elements combined made Tang think of many things he had seen before. For example, slit-mouthed woman, siren head, red wedding dress, etc. Moreover, acting in advance is never a bad thing. Host, I feel like you're not thinking about anything good. How could that be? Tang smiled. The new sealed artifact was quickly completed. It was a suit of completely black armor. The surface of the armor seemed to absorb all light that shone upon it, exuding a chilling aura. Tang opened the system interface to check the corresponding attributes. Item information. A sealed artifact made from the uniqueness of Sequence 4 Undying, retaining a certain, living, characteristic. The wearer of the armor can freely enter and exit the spirit world by providing a certain amount of spirituality. The armor itself is equivalent to a small, underworld. By providing spirituality, it can open the gates of the underworld, rapidly releasing a large number of souls and undead accumulated within. When a large amount of spirituality is injected at once, this sealed artifact will transform into an incomplete mythical creature for 15 seconds, and the duration can be extended by providing more spirituality. The wearer can gain powerful regenerative abilities. Even if the wearer's flesh and blood are damaged, they can be restored through a period of self-healing. Negative effects will gradually lead the wearer to death. It is a living sealed artifact. The longer the wearer carries it, the more spirituality will be absorbed by the artifact. One day, it may become like the wearer. Sealing method. Place it in a bright room, and ensure that there are no creatures within a 10-meter radius that can provide spirituality. Tang carefully read the information about this armor. It's alive. Tang looked at the armor again and took out a copper whistle from the system warehouse. When the copper whistle appeared, the armor suddenly moved, then stopped again. It is alive, but its activity is clearly insufficient. That is to say, without a user or other creatures providing spirituality, this activity is not enough to make it move on its own. Tang added a note to the information list provided by the system. If it's just like this, it's still acceptable. Next, I need to consider how to minimize the negative effects. His father was not around, and Tang himself was not a high-sequence Beander, so he could only use other methods to restrain the sealed artifact. Tang took out a square seal from the warehouse. This originated from sequence 6 of the Sun Pathway, the Notary, a sealed artifact called the Coronation Seal. Tang took a few steps, pulled out a piece of parchment from the desk, and began to write on it using ancient Hermes as the base. After writing the content, Tang blew on the parchment, then took out a silver knife and walked to the armor, scraping off a little iron powder from its surface. He wanted to use the spirituality remaining in the armor itself to make a contract. The Coronation Seal, mixed with the iron powder, was pressed onto the lower right corner of the parchment, leaving a seal with a sun symbol on the parchment. The words on the parchment suddenly lit up. Each word shone with a scorching light like the sun, somewhat scorching. A long time later, the light slowly faded, which also symbolized the establishment of the contract. This will limit the activity of this armor. It will not, or rarely, show its living characteristics before spirituality is injected. It will also not consume too much of the user's life force on a daily basis. Of course, the duration will not be too long. After all, it was a demigod-level sealed artifact, and the contract effect only belonged to sequence 6, so the strength would not be too high. Tang glanced at the contents of the contract and rolled it up with peace of mind, throwing it into the drawer. As for the part about death, I can only see how long it will take for Owen to become an undying. As long as the sealed artifact is turned into a potion and drunk at that time, the negative effects will be interrupted. After putting away the items, Tang shouted outside, signaling the guard he had called in advance to come in and take the items away. In this way, the problem of the sealed artifact was also brought to an end. Clapping his hands, Tang prepared to go out. The people sent to find the thumb tree had already returned. The harvest was not abundant. In this era, there were still many mysterious and terrifying elements. Even if knowledgeable people knew that this disgusting-looking tree had non-toxic and sugary fruits, its chilling appearance still led more people who saw it to cut it down, fearing that it was a minion or shadow of an evil god. It's hard to comment on this idea. Do you think that if you cut down the tree, the evil god won't find you? The Rose Bishop will come to your door to sing and dance rap later. Tang planted the 2 eerie-looking trees in the courtyard he had bought before. It still needs a certain amount of extraordinary factors to influence it. Tang glanced at the system warehouse and took out a short staff inlaid with a green gemstone from it. Item name: Staff of Life. Item information: a sealed artifact made from the uniqueness of sequence 5 of the Farmer Pathway, Druid. Its appearance is a short staff inlaid with an emerald gemstone, 20 inches long, made of alder wood produced in the highlands, with unknown inscriptions all over it, suspected to be a variant of certain prayers from the Earth Mother Church's Holy Scripture of Life. When a certain amount of spirituality is injected into this sealed artifact, the plants within a 15-meter radius will receive a greater boost of life force, which can stimulate plant seeds and make them grow extraordinarily, obeying the user's orders and attacking enemies. It can continuously heal the user's body. Even if a finger is broken or internal organs rupture, it can be repaired, but it is only limited to injuries such as broken fingers and damaged internal organs. If life is threatened, this sealed artifact can only delay death. When a large amount of spirituality is injected at once, it can release a large amount of toxins, which can be transmitted through air and contact. Of course, the user is also not immune. Negative effects. Over time, this sealed artifact will cause the animals and plants around it to frantically produce the desire to mate, and the life-born will survive in a strange way and be full of hostility towards all creatures. Sealing method: place it quietly in a place without animals or plants. To be honest, I hate this sealed artifact. Tang muttered, inserting the short staff into the soil where the thumb tree was planted. This thing reminded him of when he went to find the mermaid and the monsters that were created on the ship after some algae in the sea were mixed with the wooden ship near the Staff of Life. He shuddered at the thought of it. He really didn't want to experience that kind of thing a second time. Although it was very likely that the power of the Earth Mother remained in that part of the sea, causing the extraordinary power of the Farmer Pathway to mutate. He decisively threw the sealed artifact into the system space, but he still almost capsized, and everyone almost went into the sea to feed the fish. Set up a spiritual cage to prevent the escaped spirituality from causing the surrounding flora and fauna to mate crazily. Tang quickly made preparations, and then only needed to wait for the thumb tree to grow. However, Tang raised his head, his spiritual intuition reminding him of something. The surrounding space rippled with a burst of fantastical colors, and then, a huge tentacle suddenly appeared, and a letter floated down. Tang caught it, opened it, and began to read. Help. Simple characters appeared at the beginning of the letter. Tang frowned and continued reading. The huge, octopus-like creature retracted its tentacles and waited quietly for a reply. This letter came from his former companion, also Abraham. I'm trapped in a circus, Tang, this is in Tingen, if you're still here, no, don't come. The ink was thick, and the writer seemed to be suffering some kind of fatal threat, causing the words he wrote to reveal strangeness and anxiety. Don't come. Tang looked at the octopus-like spirit world creature and asked in a deep voice, can you locate also Abraham? The huge octopus head thought for a while, but shook its head blankly. System, what's going on? Updating new task. The system's voice suddenly rang out. In a circus with a huge pointed roof, also Abraham, with neat short hair, wearing a black robe, and with an anxious and frightened face, resisted looking at the terrifying scene on the stage, trembling and struggling to use the traveler's ability to open a door to the outside. However, it wouldn't work. Even if he was a traveler, he was subjected to a terrifying suppression of his rank in this place, and he couldn't open a door that penetrated space at all. He would die, he would definitely die. Why does this place have this kind of thing? On the stage, screams and blood spurted out, and a huge, wriggling monster with 3 heads, dozens of legs, the limbs of a sheep, the head of a pig, the body of a tiger, and the tail of a snake, like a stitched monster, ate half of the guest who had just come on stage with relish, and the remaining half swayed, eventually falling to the ground, with a large amount of internal organs flowing out along with the blood, polluting the ground. Below the stage were many people, many people. This circus, which should have been deserted, now seemed to have become a household name, a well-known place. Old people, teenagers, vagrants, knights, many people of different ages, genders, and identities sat among them, laughing and applauding at the performance on stage. Amidst the cheers of the audience, the only few who did not cheer along seemed somewhat out of place. Next, we will have an even more vivid, more fiery, and more audience-pleasing and audience-satisfying performance. Now, we sincerely invite Mr. Not Belia to dedicate his life to our stage. Cheer, praise. This is a miracle, this is the great miracle that life itself gives us. Let us witness this moment, this is a myth forged by deformity and life together. This is us, this is the most spectacular moment of our freak show. The magician wearing a polite hat appeared on the stage from who knows when and where, and his loud, impassioned voice aroused a warm welcome from the audience. The huge wriggling stitched monster quietly left the stage, and the figure of the extraordinary who had been half-eaten seemed like a projection of history, disappearing along with his blood and the internal organs on the ground, as if he had never appeared. The entire stage suddenly dimmed, and the stage lights, which were lit from who knows where, instantly illuminated a certain seat not far behind also Abraham. Also Abraham couldn't help but look over and saw a tall, burly man standing up little by little with a look of difficulty. He was like a manipulated puppet, his limbs stiff, walking towards the stage little by little amidst the exclamations and applause of the surrounding people. At the same time, also Abraham saw an additional figure among the audience around him. It was the extraordinary who had just been eaten. At this time, he was applauding enthusiastically, smiling brightly, covered in blood, but he didn't look like a normal person. It was as if he had just experienced an unusual fight, and he was the ultimate victor. But also Abraham knew very well that this person had just been eaten by the monster in this place. The cheers of the audience seemed to have a strange magic. The sound of cheers was like an invisible hand, wanting to hang him on this dome, making his mind more and more chaotic. In the countless shouts and roars of the audience, he felt that he should be not far from death, really not far. Belia should be a member of the blood worship sect. The latest novels are first published at. He watched the demon named Not Belia take the stage. The magician prepared a high-altitude tightrope performance for him. The demon, who was at least sequence 4, was attacked by some monster halfway and fell from the high altitude. Sequence 4, devil, with a strong physique and spell-like abilities, cold, sharp, cunning, can induce the minds of others on a spiritual level. Beautiful, brilliant fireworks lit up from the high platform, and a sequence 4 demon died. The magician, who was splashed with blood, still held the short staff in his hand high and tipped his hat when the brilliant blood flowers exploded. Thank you very much for not Belia's wonderful performance. Next we have Mr. Also Abraham. No. Tang put down the iron chain in his hand. His divination was being hindered. Something of a high rank was affecting also Abraham himself, affecting the effect of the divination. System, what's going on with the task you just released? New task has been updated. Task: the circus's magic show. Your friend seems to have encountered a little trouble, please help him escape from danger as much as possible. This task is a phased task, and the next phase of the task can only be triggered after completing the previous phase of the task. Note: this task is extremely dangerous, please choose carefully. Host. Something of a high rank is affecting the divination. Host. The system was simple and clear, it's very far away, this system cannot determine what it is for the time being, but the program is giving the task like this. High rank. Tang picked up the staff of life on the ground, also mentioned the circus in the letter he sent, which should refer to the circus in Tingen. If it's the circus in Tingen, I only know one place. He looked into the distance, seeming to see that little visited, out-of-the-way place. Chapter 14,014 They chanted miracles. System, can you detect what exactly happened in that direction? Unknown factors are influencing the situation. High sequence interference. Did Olsen run into a grade 0 sealed artifact? To be able to interfere with the system and hinder the detection of the spirit world's creatures, this isn't an ordinary grade 0 sealed artifact. Did some secret organization make a move? Or is it that a high sequence sealed artifact has gone out of control, or is it a promotion ritual? After the Four Emperors' War, although the vital forces of the major churches were reduced, the same was true for those secret organizations. To do this kind of thing in a place that is obviously being watched by the three major churches, it seems that they are very confident in their concealment. For some reason, Tang thought of the demon from the very beginning. The blood worship sect. Tang stood up and walked towards the castle, while simultaneously opening the system interface. System, locate the spirit world coordinates in that direction. OK. Beneath the enormous dome were countless fine lines that could not be easily detected. The origins of those fine lines came from the infinitely high sky, connected to each audience member, but the fine lines extending from the audience members were constantly converging in one direction. The audience's cheers continued, like a never-ending, wonderful drama. Everyone's face had the same smile and fanaticism. Staring at them for too long would make one's hair stand on end, like looking at puppets that had already lost their lives, leaving only decaying and smelly shells. They chanted miracles, but seemed to mechanically repeat their actions endlessly. They seemed to be alive, but were all already dead. They seemed to be dead, but were all like living beings. Olsen stiffly walked towards the stage, a spotlight shining on his body from an unknown source, making him particularly prominent among a group of puppets. He wanted to resist, but his body was constantly losing control, as if he was being manipulated by fine lines, his body completely out of control. As a member of Abraham, he clearly remembered that this terrifying extraordinary ability originated from Sequence 5 of the Seer Pathway, from a marionettist. But the marionettist spirit thread manipulation is impossible to control so many marionettes at once. Now, the number of ordinary people and extraordinary individuals in the venue has reached a rather exaggerated level, and a small circus tent should not be able to accommodate so many people, but this place is completely different. The high dome seems to have no boundaries, the barriers expanding infinitely in all directions. This place seems to have infinite space, and more shadows are hidden under the high dome, like primitive beasts lying prostrate, waiting for the opportunity to spy on everyone who enters. Sequence 4, no, Sequence 4 can no longer cause this kind of influence. Although he didn't know what Sequence 3 and Sequence 2 of the Seer Pathway were called, This kind of influence, this phenomenon that could easily crush a Sequence 4 demon, was enough to prove that this place, or the person manipulating this place, or some terrifying sealed artifact, had reached the level of a saint, or an angel of the earth. If this kind of thing were to erupt in Tingen, even if the Archbishop of the Orthodox Church took action, it would be very troublesome. I should worry about myself first. Olsen smiled bitterly, no longer wanting to resist the sense of manipulation from the spirit body. Facing a Sequence 4, as a traveler, he might still be able to fight, but facing a Sequence 3, or even a Sequence 2 person or sealed artifact, even if he wanted to resist, there was no possibility of turning the tables. Take it one step at a time. He took a deep breath, his expression firm. Judging from the situation in the previous rounds, it was not a situation of certain death. The person behind the scenes, or the sealed artifact, obviously followed a certain logic, as long as they completed their request. Olsen. A voice suddenly rang out, startling Olsen. But he immediately reacted, it was Tang's voice. "Tang, is that you?" he said eagerly, his voice a little anxious, causing the smiles on the faces of the audience around him, who were still cheering and watching him, to stiffen. Olsen quickly stopped speaking. "It's me." Tang's voice was very vague, as if it had penetrated layers of barriers, coming from a corner of the spirit world that had not yet been completely closed off. "There isn't much time, tell me about the situation on your side first." "It's like this," Olsen quickly recounted what had happened on his side, from when he first entered the circus to the death of a Sequence 4 demon, briefly and concisely. "You're saying, they're chanting miracles?" "Yes." Olsen was puzzled, but did not ask his question. Seeing that the other side had obviously quieted down and there was no movement, he smiled bitterly. "I probably won't be able to get out. Tang, if possible, I can only ask you to tell my parents, I knew I shouldn't have." "Don't say such discouraging words." Tang suddenly spoke. "I do have a way, if it's really what I think it is. This method has a certain danger, do you want to try it?" Hearing this, Olsen gritted his teeth and said, "It's already like this, even if there is danger, I can only take a gamble." "Like this?" Olsen listened in a daze. When he walked to the stage again and saw the smiling magician waving at him, Olsen gritted his teeth and quickly said before the magician could speak, "I want to perform a magic show." He suddenly found that the spirit threads controlling him seemed to have loosened. "Oh." The magician was obviously very surprised, and a more exaggerated smile than just now suddenly appeared on his gentle face. The corners of his mouth were split to his ears. Looking closely, Olsen realized that the other party's face was covered with wriggling flesh buds, which made him even more terrifying with his pale makeup. "Guest, do you want to show us an even more interesting performance?" "Good. Good. No problem. Our deformed circus loves this kind of unexpected harvest the most. But guest, you have to remember. You can't do some unprepared performances and spoil the interest of the audience." In an instant, the shouts in the entire circus stopped. From noise to stagnation, this process was like rehearsing it hundreds of times, the guest and the magician cooperating with incomparable skill. Everyone stared at Olsen with faint gazes, the focus of everyone's attention, making Olsen's stiff body even more at a loss. The magician smiled and took out a few transparent balls from his red suit and threw them into the sky. With a bang, the small balls exploded, like magic props that attracted people. The few extraordinary individuals here who could still move and had not been made into marionettes looked at each other. And Olsen and the magician, who were supposed to perform on stage, disappeared at the same time. In the empty circus performance venue, the previously disappeared deformed monsters suddenly appeared, and together with the clown of equal length and width, began to perform a strange and bizarre drama. Tang returned to the castle and found Owen, who was tinkering with new magical items. "Owen, I need a favor." Owen put down the gauntlet, which belonged to a suit of armor, looking puzzled. "What's wrong?" "Tang, you're usually not so flustered. This isn't the time to worry about that. Take me with you on a spirit world transfer to Tingen. Walking or taking a carriage would definitely be too late." Tang took a deep breath and said in a low voice, "I'm afraid there's a Sequence 2 sealed artifact out of control over there." PFF'd. Owen almost choked. He coughed several times before calming down. His face suddenly darkened. "Sequence 2? Are you sure you're not mistaken?" "Most likely not." "Owen, hurry." That magical item you have has the extraordinary ability to transfer through the spirit world. If we don't hurry, countless ordinary people will become part of that sealed artifact. Without further explanation, Tang urged him while extracting the specific coordinates from the system and displaying them in front of Owen. The system was monitoring the situation there, but from the looks of things, it had already developed into a very dangerous state. All the spectators are constantly shouting for miracles. That's probably the last roar of the extraordinary characteristics left behind by a miracle invoker who has already died. Its obsession, a kind of crazy spiritual imprint of the potion itself, a kind of muttering, or perhaps something at a deeper level. When he heard Olsen's description, Tang's intuition was triggered. Countless puppets, deformed monsters, a supreme dome, boundless space, and the extraordinary individuals constantly being selected onto the stage, being asked to display miracles. It was like a performance that could never stop. Tang used dream divination to ask his spirituality, and a term suddenly appeared in his mind. It was a sealed artifact that had only been mentioned by name in the original book, a level 0 sealed artifact controlled by the Storm Church, 032, the never-ending theater. It appeared during the Four Emperors' War and was a terrifying sealed artifact formed from the extraordinary characteristics of a fallen miracle invoker. Specific description: unknown. Specific ability: unknown. Specific sealing method: unknown. The system's current energy reserves and authority power make it very difficult to accurately locate and use identification to determine information. This approach will be completely offset by the suppression from the miracle invoker's authority. The Night Goddess Church, the Storm Lord Church, and the God of Craftsman Church in Tingen do not have relatively powerful extraordinary individuals guarding them. If we need to transfer someone from Backland, then most likely. The worst outcome is that the entire Tingen will be transformed into a component of that sealed artifact, and then, destroyed by the church along with the entire Tingen. Of course, this is not 100% accurate. Perhaps the miracle invoker is digesting the potion, or perhaps other extraordinary individuals are trying to build an advancement ritual. But according to the system's calculations, the latter two and other possibilities are very small. Even if it really is the latter two, or other possibilities, pulling so many ordinary people into becoming puppets and killing so many people to become part of the ritual, he doesn't believe that miracle invoker, that extraordinary individual trying to advance, will stop. At this moment, the fully dressed Owen suddenly reached out and grabbed Tang. He didn't waste any words, but directly pulled Tang into the spirit world. The surrounding area lit up with red, white, and colorful blocks, randomly splattered around like an oil painting. The color blocks were dense and chaotic to the extreme. The spirit world of mysticism is a special space without direction, without distance, composed of various symbolic symbols that have been transformed into entities. An endless sky overhead, where 7 different colors of clear radiance shimmered, containing countless knowledge, and even deeper. Owen was taking Tang through the spirit world, somewhat unskillfully. When they reappeared, the two had arrived in Tingen. It was just a distance away from the circus that Tang had visited before. Tang said nothing. He blew a copper whistle, and bones spurted out of the ground, stacking on top of each other to form a skeleton with black flames burning in its eyes. The Bone Messenger looked at Tang, and Tang handed the letter he had already written to the Bone Messenger. Before the Bone Messenger left, he immediately looked at Owen. He had notified his father, and he also needed to take other precautions. The situation inside is probably very complicated, Owen. You stay outside. If the situation is not good, then immediately inform the church. If he couldn't solve it, he could only pray that the people of the Orthodox Church could quickly deal with this sealed artifact. You don't have to go in, Owen said in a low voice. Just notify the church and there won't be any problems. Let them send high-sequence extraordinary individuals. At most, some people will die. This won't affect us. We don't need to take risks. Although the brothers often bickered, Owen was genuinely concerned about Tang's safety. That's likely a sequence 2 of the seer pathway, Tang stared at Owen and said seriously. This is a rare opportunity, and I must try it. When he realized that this was likely a high-sequence seer sealed artifact formed during the Four Emperors' War, Tang had already made this plan. With the system, he had a way to separate at least one potion each from sequence 2 to sequence 9 from the extraordinary characteristics of sequence 2. And this means that as long as he can obtain this sealed artifact, as long as his ritual is correct, able to digest the potion, and knows the auxiliary materials of the potion, he cannot worry about not finding the main materials of the potion. As long as he is given time and there are no other dangers, then he will definitely be a sequence 2 miracle invoker, which will reduce a lot of time spent searching for potions. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And in the future, I am afraid that he will no longer have such a coincidental good thing. The newest and most complete novels are first published at Uptak. In this era, once weakness foreshadows a very dangerous future. Hearing this, Owen could not think of anything to persuade him for a moment. Sequence 2. Tang smiled again. Don't think I don't have any trump cards. If it's absolutely impossible, I would never risk doing this thing. After all, magicians never do unprepared performances. He has a system, which is likely derived from something, a part of the existence above the true gods, which is his biggest trump card. Woo, host, I'm so touched. The system was immediately in tears. I can trust you, right? Tang thought in his heart. Of course you can. Then, host, can you choose a mystic alchemist? Tang, let's not talk about this topic, we are still good friends. System, hee. Tang's eyes looked at the domed building not far away, or you can go and confront that sealed artifact head on. After you're done, I'll switch pathways. System, no hee. Just at this moment, a figure stumbled and ran from not far away. Olsen was unusually disheveled, and his eyes lit up when he saw Tang. He couldn't bother to deal with the blood stains on his body and ran over. Tang, it's really great to meet you here. Olsen was in tears, and only calmed down when a guy in armor grabbed his collar and lifted him up, stopping him from hugging Tang and crying. Olsen, what's the situation inside? As the smoke billowed, the scene before Olsen's eyes spun. When his vision returned, the surrounding audience had vanished, leaving only the magician with his ghastly white makeup standing before him. A beam of light from an unknown source illuminated Olsen and his surroundings, but beyond that, there was nothing else, only empty darkness. In the darkness, some even more bizarre monsters seemed to be watching him. Olsen subconsciously swallowed, and then heard the magician's smiling voice. Esteemed guest, you have 30 minutes to prepare. May I ask, what is the miracle you speak of? Of course. If your miracle can satisfy all of our guests, then the aberrant circus will fulfill your every desire. The magician gesticulated wildly, but the flesh on his face suddenly trembled, revealing the tender pink skin and large patches of wriggling maggots beneath. In the gaps between the maggots, countless strange, transparent worms writhed incessantly. But, he said with a hint of apology, if your performance fails to satisfy the needs of our audience, then you must offer the circus, and its selfless performers, a small token of appreciation. As for what that token of appreciation was, the magician didn't say, but Olsen understood perfectly well. Olsen digested the knowledge in his mind, knowing this was a high-stakes gamble. Win, and he could live. Lose, he'd rather kill himself than become a puppet in this place. I need props, Olsen said, his voice trembling slightly, unsure whether from fear or excitement. Although he trusted Tang, but mainly, he really couldn't understand what Tang had provided. What do you need? The aberrant circus will provide it all. Anything. Naturally. Of course, the so-called magic props couldn't contain any extraordinary factors that exceeded the level of this place. The magician smiled without a word. Olsen's eyes, however, lit up, and the corners of his mouth turned up. The magician seemed to sense something, and a premonition arose. As if having received permission, Olsen began to rattle off the items on the mental list in his head, spewing out a string of nouns that were unheard of to both speaker and listener. Cylinder, base, piston, crank connecting rod mechanism, slide valve steam distribution structure, speed control structure, flywheel. Throttle valve, centrifugal governor, steel, crankshaft, eccentric wheel, fire tube boiler. The magician went from sitting upright at the beginning to looking blank, and then the maggots on his face began to break free from the restraints of flesh, as if unable to withstand the soaking of knowledge, and were about to lose control. The magician wanted to stop Olsen from continuing, but Olsen spoke first, interrupting the magician's spellcasting. Not yet, I need to start explaining in detail, are you alright? While reeling off the menu with increasing fluency, the traveler even thoughtfully asked a question. Nah, ally. The magician was bewildered, the magician didn't understand, the magician began to understand, respect, and mechanically follow the other party's words to display a miracle. That was what he had promised, providing the magic props, providing things that had no extraordinary factors, not exceeding its own rules, so the magician followed his own logic, mechanically repeating his set instructions. He'd already made such a bold claim, what else could he do? Olsen saw that the magician, who looked about to collapse and whose face was truly as pale as paper, snapped his fingers, and the surroundings suddenly lit up. Various scattered parts seemed to be conjured out of thin air by some mysterious power. The huge circus, its dome was silently trembling. At this moment, the miracle displayed by the magician was rapidly consuming the power accumulated in this place. The Beyonders who were watching the scenes of the aberrant show were surprised to find that the cheers of the surrounding puppets, which were constant, had weakened. What was going on? Their expressions varied, but they all realized at the same time, this was an opportunity. Next, we have the pleasure of introducing Mr. Marcel Lebraze. Unexpectedly, the aberrant show on the stage suddenly stopped, and the monsters made of various flesh blocks trembled and stopped moving. At this time, an old woman wearing a black robe and holding a purple crystal ball walked out from behind the scenes, her voice hoarse and unpleasant but resounding throughout the circus. That's not right. Someone suddenly shouted, the previous performer hasn't finished performing yet. The old woman cast an icy gaze over, and the surrounding puppets silently twisted their heads, some even turning 180 degrees, their hollow eyes staring at the man who had spoken. The man immediately broke out in a cold sweat and shrank back. The seer old woman didn't give an answer. A man stood up, walking stiffly and terrified towards the stage. That's not right, it shouldn't be me, why is it me, he muttered to himself, but he couldn't resist the manipulation from the spirit threads. However, the high-sequence Beyonders who had strayed into this place had quietly discovered the problem. The power manipulating them had strengthened. But, the accumulated power of this place was rapidly weakening. What was happening here? Could this be an opportunity and a possibility for them to escape? At this moment, Olsen had barely finished reciting the knowledge in his head, and when he looked back at the magician, Olsen suddenly felt that the other party looked quite pitiful. He felt his head empty just from reading those things, unable to process them. Tisk, this magician seemed even more miserable. At this moment, the magician looked battered and exhausted, his body covered in crazily wriggling maggots. His neat clothes and hat seemed to have dissolved, revealing tender internal organs and jagged ribs. A dazed look appeared in his eyes, which were exposed and surrounded by countless maggots. He was like a talisman that had been discarded after use, exuding a sense of brokenness, as if he would shatter in the next second. Shattering into a pile of flesh and wriggling worms. I'm guilty, I actually feel sorry for this thing, Olsen thought silently. A huge machine appeared in front of Olsen. Olsen looked at the assembled steel monster with awe. Exquisite parts, meticulous construction, and power beyond the times. This was not some precisely assembled mystical monster, but a true industrial miracle. The Beyonders of the Artisan God Church would go crazy if they saw this. He thought of this, and then seemed to realize something. It seems like I'm over time. He'd been talking for so long that his mouth was a little dry. The magician couldn't care about that anymore. He raised his arm, which had already begun to disintegrate, pointed to the huge machine, and then snapped his fingers. Flames burned fiercely, and the roar of a huge steam engine echoed in the empty hidden place. With a buzz, the steel behemoth slowly moved its feet. The dome trembled wildly, and the terrifying power that had just been completely consumed suddenly seemed to be replenished, and a sense of terror suddenly weighed on the heads of all the audience. All the puppets stood up. Loud, terrifying, murmuring, muttering, finally turning into a roar. They were enthusiastic and shouted, "Miracle! Miracle! The miracle of life! The miracle of industry!" The steel behemoth pierced through the curtain and entered the stage. Inside the gigantic circus, beneath the high dome, the lights were dim, the air heavy, suffocating. The seats below were densely packed with people, their faces blank and crazed, and the moment the giant steel behemoth appeared, their fanatical voices reached their climax. A series of low rumbles intertwined with the chaotic voices of the crowd, sending chills down one's spine. On the stage, the dismembered corpses that had been scattered about inexplicably vanished, and no one noticed that another fanatical figure had joined the audience. Their cheers, their shouts, formed wave after wave of spiritual thrilling, and the howling spirituality, like maggots clinging to bones, infected every extraordinary being present. The extraordinary individuals held their breaths, concentrating, and lowered their heads in silence. They sealed off their spirituality, enduring the bizarre whispers emitted by those marionettes, whispers that possessed the power of insane infection. As the miracle was produced, as the miracle appeared, the dome, which had been somewhat shaken before, was now stabilized again, even stronger than before. The mystical power here was once again strengthened. And then I was thrown out, Orson said, still somewhat frightened after recounting his experience. He was swallowed by darkness the moment the steel beast, composed of countless ingenious parts, began to move, and when he opened his eyes again, he found himself at the entrance of the circus. That magician turned into a puddle of mud in the end. To be honest, I even suspected that I would be killed directly. I was prepared to die, but I didn't expect that I would actually be able to get out. He looked at Tang and said seriously, "I owe you a life, Tang." "I was gambling too," Tang said very honestly. He didn't know the situation inside and could only guess based on his understanding of the extraordinary abilities of a miracle inventor. Fortunately, it was indeed a sealed artifact condensed from a dead extraordinary characteristic, and not a miracle inventor digesting a potion, or some other situation. 032 The Never-Ending Theater. This sealed artifact originated from the Four Emperors' War. According to the description, it should be behind the Storm Lord Church's Gate of Seal, but that was during the Fifth Epoch, when Zhou Mingrui descended, not the current Fourth Epoch. Most sealed artifacts don't have legs. Did someone bring this sealed artifact to Tingen? Or could it really be that this sealed artifact happened to be able to move on its own and ran to Tingen? Tang tried to divine whether there would be danger next, but he failed. With a sealed artifact of a high-sequence diviner pathway interfering around, and insufficient preconditions, it was not difficult to understand why his divination would not work. However, in this case, we not only have to guard against this sealed artifact, which is obviously somewhat out of control, but also the mastermind behind it. Tang pondered for a moment, preparing to go in and find out. Tang. Orson looked at Tang with some horror. "You don't want to go in, do you?" "Why not?" Tang tried to make himself look relaxed. "Obviously, this thing follows its own logic. It's likely an out-of-control mystical item. Moreover, judging from your description, showing it miracles that are difficult to achieve can effectively weaken the power of this mystical item. I can try it. At worst, I'll be thrown out like you." "Orson, you're so brave. Thank you for the compliment." Tang smiled, then nodded to the black-armored knight beside him. "Then I'll go in." The black-armored knight nodded silently, but Orson suddenly said, "Wait." Before Tang could say anything, Orson suddenly stuffed something into his hand. It was a palm-sized book with a bronze-green cover, on which a line was written in ancient Fasak. "I came, I saw, I recorded." Tang looked at the book in his hand, somewhat dumbfounded. "This is an extraordinary item I possess, equivalent to Sequence 6 of the Apprentice Pathway, Recorder." Orson explained. Tang thought, "You don't need to explain, I know how to use this thing better than you." What a coincidence. It already contains the extraordinary abilities of two travels. Orson continued quickly after introducing the usage and negative effects of this mystical item. In addition, there is also a demigod-level banishment. This was the extraordinary ability of Sequence 4 of the Apprentice Pathway, Secret Sorcerer, which could banish the target to another space, a very powerful supernatural power used to expel danger. Two travels, one demigod-level banishment. Tang nodded solemnly, accepting the other party's kindness. "I won't accompany you in. To be honest, my legs are a little weak now." Tang patted the other party's shoulder and then walked towards the circus entrance not far away. Orson stood there for a while, then Owen beside him also patted his shoulder, making Orson grimace. "If you're tired, you can go to the hotel to rest first. I'll watch over here." I hope nothing happens, Orson rubbed his shoulder and said softly. Owen remained noncommittal. His younger brother had always been like this, sometimes. The latest novels are available on Vertex Novel Network. In the dark armor, Owen's eyes flickered, and he clenched his fist involuntarily. He needed more power. The cheers, the jubilation, the scene of tens of thousands of people surging towards him, made Tang feel like his trypophobia was about to flare up. Under the vision of the spirit-body threads, countless spirit-body threads stretched towards the high dome-like braids, densely packed, overlapping so that it was impossible to see what the source was. System. Host, I'm here. Use appraisal. Appraising, automatically consuming one appraisal chance, remaining appraisal chances, 143. Appraisal failed, reason for failure, appraisal target cannot belong to sequence 2 or above level of mystical creation. Please be cautious about using each appraisal chance and improve your sequence. Failure was something Tang had already expected. Tang watched his spirit body threads involuntarily drifting towards the dome, and began to manipulate his spirit body threads, preventing them from being captured by some force above the dome. This scene is very similar to the scene in the ancient palace of the Hornassus Mountains. Speaking of which, did this miracle inventor also like to hang people up like sausages before he died? Tang even had the leisure to think of this. The internal and external space of the circus were completely unequal. Well, this was, after all, a world with mysticism, and this kind of thing was not uncommon. Just, what would happen if an arbiter pathway angel used reality enhancement decree here? Would everyone be compressed into a meat pie by the space? Tang shook his head, found a chair that automatically unfolded wirelessly, which was not yet occupied, and sat down. He looked at the stage. On the stage was a woman wearing a classical robe, who was currently being attacked by a clown with exaggerated face paint throwing knives at her. The woman was tied to a huge disc, and the clown, blindfolded, was constantly throwing sharp knives backwards. Each of those sharp knives narrowly missed the woman's body and stuck into the disc, buzzing. That was an extraordinary ability belonging to the monster pathway. System. Mission. Circus Magic Show. Your friend seems to be in a bit of trouble. Please help him escape danger as much as possible. Status. Completed. Mission reward. This mission is a phased mission, and rewards will be accumulated. Note: if mission rewards are spent in advance, the quality of the final mission reward will decrease. New mission updated. Mission: Fortuneteller, Clown, Magician. You seem to have arrived in a dimension that does not belong to the real world. Here, countless people are shouting for miracles, but what is a miracle? Could it be the slapstick performances of the actors? Note: this mission is extremely dangerous, please choose carefully, host. Current progress. Second stage. That lady of the monster pathway ultimately died under the countless flying knives of the clown. Miracles did not happen. The female Beander, riddled with bloody holes, quickly stopped breathing amidst the shouts of countless spectators, becoming a corpse. Like countless losers before, her body slowly disappeared. Tang turned his gaze. A tall lady in a classical robe appeared silently beside him. Her expression was uniformly similar to those of the surrounding marionettes. Countless spiritual threads intertwined and spiraled, rising towards the infinitely high dome, captured by some power. System: identify. Identifying. One identification attempt has been automatically consumed. Remaining identification attempts, 141. Gladys Bane. Monster Pathway Sequence 7, Lucky 1. Status: Marionette asterisk, asterisk and hash. What is that string of garbled characters at the end? There is a high sequence power influencing it. It's strange, not just a simple marionette. The system was also quite curious. Is it a miracle of a miracle inventor? Resurrection from the dead is a miracle. Tang lowered his eyes. But even a miracle inventor only has 4 chances at such a miracle. It's more likely they died and became historical remnants, lingering here for a long time. Or perhaps those who were killed never actually died, but were instantly healed the moment death arrived and became marionettes. And becoming a marionette is because of their own desires. As for what that desire is, it is naturally the desire to live. Their desires were fulfilled, but in a very twisted way. Becoming a marionette, becoming a part of the historical gap to live on, who says that isn't living? and they have thus become a part of the miracle. The danger of this place is far greater than he thought. Tang swept his gaze around. Now, only a very small portion of the crowd still seemed to have reason, and the number of these people was decreasing. Every minute someone was called by name, every minute someone died. In this vast theater, the existence of miracles was being displayed at all times. Before entering this place, Tang had already remade his face, so he wasn't afraid of being recognized. While he was sizing up others, some people also noticed him, but everyone was struggling to survive, and it was meaningless to make things difficult for others, so they obediently sat in their seats thinking about how to escape. The power of this place is getting stronger and stronger. If it truly erupts, I am afraid that the entire Tingnan will instantly turn into a dead city. And only a very small number of people discovered a problem in this panicked environment. The Beander who was previously asked to perform a magic show had never appeared again. Did he leave? Or was he killed while preparing the magic show? When a Beander who noticed this was called by name by the magician who had returned to normal, he plucked up his courage and also made a request for a magic show. And that magician also attracted the attention of all the audience in another way, and took him away from here. However, before the clown performing acrobatics on the circus stage could finish his performance, a corpse covered in blood and riddled with holes fell from a high place, bursting into brilliant blood flowers in front of the clown. The magician appeared in time, bowing to all the audience. I am very sorry to interrupt everyone's interest. It seems that this guest's performance did not meet the circus's employment standards. Although his words revealed regret, the corners of his mouth were raised high, and the pale white makeup reflected a terrifying face. It seems to be the former. The Beyonders who noticed this thought about it, thinking about what miracle they could come up with. The latest novels are first published at Open Black Lens Bracket website address Close Black Lens Bracket. Tell me, what is the sealing method for this out-of-control sealed artifact? Tang asked in his heart. Mystical creations that are 2 levels higher than Sequence 2 cannot be highly analyzed, but according to this system's speculation, it is likely related to fulfilling their miracles. By displaying a miracle through a performance that the clowns and magicians cannot complete, one can leave. If they cannot be satisfied, then their desire to want to live will be fulfilled, thereby fulfilling the miracles of others, and they will become marionettes, forever remaining as cheering spectators. So, perhaps there is such a rule in the sealing method. Tang smiled, make it unable to fulfill my miracle. Before the system could respond, a different voice suddenly appeared on the stage. It was a demigod. It was a black knight. Identifying. One identification attempt has been automatically consumed. Remaining identification attempts, 141. Secret Prayer Pathway Sequence 4, Black Knight. The magician chose an animal show for him. When that Beander came on stage, his whole body exuded an aura of evil corruption. His body suddenly swelled, becoming a giant 2 meters 3 or 4 tall. He was wearing black armor, holding a straight greatsword, and took a step forward. The monster, composed of countless animal carcasses, let out a painful scream. Its shadow also stood up at this time, entwining around the monster, and the corrosive stench immediately spread out. With a poochie sound, the monster that had killed countless Beyonders on stage was splattered into countless pieces, covered in extremely viscous black matter, preventing the wriggling pieces of flesh from wanting to reunite. Tang lowered his eyes and instructed the system to immediately remind him if his condition was abnormal. A Sequence 4 of the Hanged Man Pathway. I don't know, no, it must have been contaminated by the true creator. This blatant cultist actually appeared in Tingnan in such a grand manner. I don't know if he was passing by chance or came with a target, but he was pulled in by this out-of-control sealed artifact composed of miracle inventor characteristics. But, can this be considered a miracle? The question in Tang's heart was also the question in the hearts of everyone present. No one knew what the specific rules were. Whether defeating and killing that stitched monster could be considered a kind of miracle. The Black Knight surveyed the decaying, corrupted remains around him, then turned his crimson eyes, filled with deep madness, towards the magician emerging from the shadows. Unexpectedly, this guest's performance is quite wonderful. Surprisingly, the magician didn't get angry upon seeing the dissected patchwork creature but instead began to applaud. The magician's expression was exaggerated, seemingly astonished that the Black Knight could kill such a grotesque monster, and his entire demeanor expressed nothing but admiration for the Black Knight. It just looked a little strange. After all, no magician would express surprise and admiration while their body slowly inflated, like a balloon. As the magician clapped, the audience below erupted in thunderous applause, but the Black Knight sensed something unusual. Those corrupted and decaying monster flesh pieces were constantly disappearing. Where did they go? Only the Black Knight himself heard the hoarse, unpleasant voice. He couldn't detect where the monster flesh pieces had gone. Slowly turning his head, the Black Knight's gaze locked onto the inflating magician. Tang glanced at the inflating magician on stage. System, do you think defeating a patchwork creature counts as a miracle? In the field of mysticism, miracles are mostly defined as things that are difficult, beyond one's ability, or impossible to achieve, or events that have a very low probability of occurring or require extremely difficult conditions to be met. The concept of a miracle is broadly defined in mysticism, but clearly, none of the above fits the definition of a miracle. A sequence 4 Beyonder killing that patchwork creature is within their capabilities and does not constitute a miracle. Although the strength of that patchwork creature was strong for low to mid-sequence Beyonders, it wasn't difficult for high-sequence, demigod-level Beyonders to kill such a monster. So, it's about challenging the impossible, Tang said in his mind. This is the sequence 7, Magician's acting principle. The Miracle Invoker's Beyonder ability is like an upgraded version of the magician, but it is to realize the impossible in the eyes of others. This is a type of miracle. The magician's inflation hadn't stopped. His cheeks were bulging, his body had turned into a ball, his tuxedo swelled and tore, and various limbs and organs spurted out from his ears, mouth, and nose. Red, white, blue, green, more like a rose bishop than a rose bishop, more like flesh magic than flesh magic. So next, Mr. Ko Wilkins will perform for us, and even bigger. Tang's intuition leapt, and he quickly lowered his head, not looking at the things on stage. That is drama. Mythical creature. The magician's body reached its limit after saying the last word. He was like a balloon inflated to the extreme, gently poked by a naughty child with a sharp object, and it suddenly burst open. A monster even more terrifying, more indescribable than before, exuding the appearance of shoddy modification, suddenly appeared. It had several heads, and unlike the previous monster, its body was no longer limited to animals. Human limbs and heads were also embedded in it. No, compared to a patchwork creature, this was more like a meatball made of countless stacked pieces of flesh. Painful, fearful, insane, trembling, bizarre, emotions overlapping, revealing an unspeakable color. Ah! An untimely vomiting sound came from the frenzied crowd. Ah! Someone screamed. Those who didn't close their eyes in time and saw the form of the mythical creature had countless jumbled knowledges rushing into their brains, mutating and losing control. The audience around them stopped cheering. A young man who hadn't completely seen it, only suffering peripheral pollution, looked at them in horror. Flesh buds grew on his body, scales grew, feathers grew, the smell of sulfur emanated from his body, and various things of different colors emerged from his body at once. He was clearly contaminated by the power of the mythical creature. No, don't. One hand grabbed his hair, another grabbed his neck, countless hands tore at his body, countless marionettes, their spirit threads fluttering, flying towards the dome of the sky. Miracle, miracle, miracle of life, miracle of creation. Ah! The sound of limbs breaking accompanied the uncontrolled and polluted extraordinary characteristics slowly exuding, held in the hands of the surrounding marionettes, like secret treasures. There were many such people. Almost 1/5 of them were on the verge of losing control because they didn't lower their heads in time and faced the suddenly appearing incomplete mythical creature form, and were killed by the surrounding marionettes. What level of sequence does sequence 4 need to defeat to be considered a miracle? Tang already had the answer in his heart. Can a sequence 2 miracle invoker create a sequence 3 marionette? The answer is obvious. Perhaps the level of that monster is not comparable to sequence 3, but a monster that mixes various limbs is obviously not an ordinary sequence 4. There was a sequence 4 from the Abyss pathway, a devil, who died here before. Tang lowered his head, instructing the system. Give me an appraisal of that thing up there, see if there is any demonic power. Okay. A few seconds later, the system told Tang the feedback, host, yes, and that monster has a lot of demigod-level power from other pathways. So many demigod-level beyonders wouldn't have fallen here, Tang thought with a deep gaze. If so many demigod-level beyonders had died in Tingen, the church would have dispatched high-sequence beyonders, perhaps even saints, earth angels, to investigate. Many of the demigods who died during the Four Emperors' War should have become audience members in this never-ending theater, and become part of its composition. This is a patchwork creature, and not just any patchwork creature. A thing that fuses the bodies of various mythical creatures, the miracle of life creation. How could he not know that the miracle invoker could pull off so many crazy operations? Tang lowered his head and scribbled on the parchment. The battle on the stage only lasted for a while, and with a muffled groan, the tall black knight fell backward from the stage. However, he did not die. Half of his body had turned into rotten flesh, the armor on his body was torn apart, and many strange things had also grown on his body. These were residues brought about by the pollution of demigod-level power from various pathways. He seemed to have been severely injured, but the huge mythical creature's wriggling flesh didn't kill him. Sequence 4 of the Hanged Man pathway. With extraordinary Beyonder abilities that can damage the spirit body, he has amazing recovery abilities, can use more powerful flesh magic, and because he has listened to the voice of the true creator, he also has resistance to pollution and whispers from other pathways. What's more, the preceding sequence of the Hanged Man pathway is the Shepherd. And the Shepherd can herd Beyonders from other pathways. Multi-pathway abilities against a deformed mythical creature. Even if the wriggling flesh is like a monster pieced together from the remains of many demigods, it obviously also has spirituality. It is not a completely dead monster, it also has a spirit body. Having a spirit body means that it can be harmed by the Black Knight. This will eventually be a lose-lose battle. Of course, the strength of the two sides is still unequal, but he has also become the first Beyonder to walk off the stage alive. It's just that he still can't leave. There's no way to leave by defeating the creatures here. This book is first published on the entire network by TWKAN, COM. An old man in a linen robe, with white hair, sighed softly. The young woman beside him pursed her lips tightly, her face as pale as paper, her body exhausted from prolonged mental tension. She was only sequence 7, once her name was called, death would be the best outcome. Really, is there no way out? She couldn't help but ask the old man beside her, is there really no way out? You've seen it too. The old man shook his head, his eyes revealing the senility of approaching the end of his life. That person just now was a demigod of the seer pathway, even he can't leave here, so it will be even more difficult for us. But, the woman murmured, some people have already left. The first one, the man who said he needed to participate in a magic show. That person was a member of the Abraham family. Perhaps there are other ways out, but, the old man said, letting out another helpless sigh. The play continued. Tang rested his chin on his hand, looking at the stage, a charcoal pencil still writing something in his other hand. Next, let's welcome. After another Beyonder lost their life and reappeared in the audience, the magician reappeared, bright and radiant, raising his hat. Mr. Christian Ferreira. Tang rolled up the parchment in his hand and stood up. Corresponding knowledge fragments deducted. Remaining knowledge fragments, 8,915. Previously, exchanging for the knowledge of the steam engine consumed 1,000 knowledge fragments, and it cost 100 knowledge fragments for the system to conceal his name. After all, he didn't want to confront the church after retrieving the uniqueness of the miracle inventor just yet, so he could only spend some knowledge fragments to conceal his name from the spirit world's perspective. With the Faceless's ability and the system's interference, even Beyonders skilled in divination would find it difficult to find his true identity after leaving here. Tang pretended to be controlled by the spiritual thread suspended above his head and stepped forward. He didn't look sideways along the way until he walked up to the magician and whispered, I need to prepare a magic show. This seemed to be a switch. In fact, after Tang entered here, many people had tried to use this method to buy time and fight for a chance of salvation, but everyone died in an even more miserable way. So, his actions were not surprising to others. Based on the experience of the people present, this Beander who wanted to challenge the magic show would die miserably on stage in less than 10 minutes. Everyone was pessimistic about Tang, only the magician looked at him with a smile. Then, the world shifted, and the encouraging applause suddenly disappeared. On the empty and silent magic stage, the magician bowed to him. "You have 30 minutes to prepare." Tang tilted his head. "Can I have some magic props?" "Of course," the magician said, "but the structure cannot be too precise." Tang chuckled inwardly. "It's learned its lesson." The system exclaimed. "It's probably because Olsen's miracle scared it." Although that industrial miracle also provided extraordinary help to the power of the miracle inventor, the upfront consumption was not small. The entire theater was almost weakened because of this, and the accumulated miracles were almost completely consumed. If he were that sealed artifact, he wouldn't repeat the same mistake. Of course, as long as the structure isn't too precise, it's fine, right? Tang repeated. The magician frowned, seemingly thinking of something. An inexplicable emotion appeared on his exaggerated face, but he still nodded. Tang smiled with relief. He handed the magician what he had been writing and drawing before. The magician reached out and took it, grinning when he saw what was on the parchment. "No problem." He snapped his fingers. A sealed cuboid box appeared in front of Tang and the magician. "Next, please add water to it." Tang stood aside and said coolly, "I'll show you what kind of miracle I'm creating." The newest and fastest novels are first published. For Beyonders, there are many types of performances, and magic shows are one of them. But for other Beyonders who are not from the seer pathway, things like deceiving other people's senses and challenging the impossible, which are part of magic shows, were rarely understood by them in half an hour, let alone deceiving a sequence 2 miracle inventor. Although the magician will provide magic props, they are limited to items without extraordinary power. For Beyonders who have been immersed in the extraordinary world for a long time, this is a problem. People have blind spots in their thinking. People who often walk on the edge of the extraordinary world rarely pay attention to things without extraordinary power. When they encounter problems, they mostly think about how to solve them with mysticism, ignoring other perspectives. Therefore, for those who choose to challenge magic shows, failure is the result for most people. But Olsen was different. A miracle like a steam engine that was beyond the times directly satisfied the miracle itself, and it was not simply corresponding to the magic show. Otherwise, even if Olsen passed the magic show, he could only stay here. To leave this place unscathed, one must satisfy the miracle corresponding to the miracle inventor. Add water, yes, raise its temperature, and then add air inside, yes, add a little more. Tang didn't know when a hammer appeared in his hand. The dark golden hammer, about the length of a person's forearm, had a sense of unspoken solemnity. The magician slightly turned his body when he saw the hammer in Tang's hand, seeming a little surprised. Item information: golden hammer, silver hammer. A magical item provided by the system. Its power depends on the strength of the artisan module. Extraordinary power. The golden hammer can temporarily enhance a certain physical, mystical attribute of the item being struck, and the silver hammer can temporarily weaken a certain physical, mystical attribute of the item being struck. Negative impact: 100 knowledge fragments per hour. Don't stop, add more air in. Tang stood in front of the airtight iron box, his hammer ready to strike. The magician kept creating air in the box, and now, as the temperature rose and the pressure increased, the box began to expand outward, like a ball. A box that won't deform or be destroyed is something of mystical significance, and the magician can't provide it. Tang watched the iron box about to burst and knocked upward with the hammer. "I'll give you a buff." The iron box instantly contracted, returning to its original shape. The golden hammer applied the power of mysticism to it, making it permanently undeformable and indestructible during the duration of the golden hammer's power. "I'm quite curious, can a miracle inventor create a nuclear bomb by hand?" Tang thought with interest. For more thrilling fanfiction stories like this, check out my channel Fanfic Audiobook. Dive into epic adventures, mysterious realms, and legendary journeys brought to life through immersive storytelling. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing audiobooks.